Chapter 16-17. Shrouded in crimson flames, she turned into a vermilion bird and sped away into the distance. Perhaps she was afraid of Bufong, or perhaps she wanted to break free from the shackles. So, she flapped her wings and sped away. However, Bufong hadn't forgotten what the Qilin had said. If he wanted to awaken Mulberry's consciousness, he had to conquer her. How? For a chef, there was no better way to conquer someone than with a dish. The vermilion bird cried, spread her wings, and soared high into the sky. However, Bufong was faster. After all, Bufong's strength was there for all to see. The vermilion bird cried and sped toward the coastline like a ball of fire. Below, it was the jewel. With one step, Bufong landed in front of the vermilion bird. His divine sense shot out again and directly grabbed Mulberry, who had turned into the vermilion bird. In fact, the vermilion bird was very strong. In Bufong's senses, she was much stronger than Patriarch Penglai. However, when facing Bufong, she didn't dare to fight back. Perhaps this was the bond between them. The vermilion bird was caught. With the rope tied, the vermilion bird transformed back into Mulberry. Her fiery red hair spread out, and she blinked her big eyes at Bufong. Pursing her red lips, she cried, "Ah, ah," since she couldn't run away, she could only choose to act cute. Of course, her act was ineffective against Bufong. Grabbing Mulberry, he landed on the jewel and found some clothes for her to change into. Bufong began to think about how to conquer her. Standing at the prow of the ship, he looked into the distance. Bufong seemed to sense the aura of other artifact spirits. The other spiritual energy seals should have been broken as well. Bufong focused his eyes. The other spiritual energy seals have been broken. I wonder where the god of cooking sets are. Bufong took a deep breath and exhaled. In any case, what Bufong needed to do next was to find and assemble the god of cooking set. However, Bufong had a headache. If the vermilion bird Fusong was like this, would the other artifact spirits be the same? Black tortoise, white tiger, and Nicholas, could it be that he had to conquer it himself? Sigh, why is it so hard to be a chef? Do-do-do, the steam whistle sounded. The ship was sailing at full speed on the sea. A rainbow-colored rain of spiritual energy continued to fall from the sky. The world seemed to be changing under the washing of the rain. Rumble, dark clouds were gathering in the sky. Thunder continued to explode. It seemed like a powerful being had descended. The ship continued to travel for an unknown amount of time. Everyone's faces were filled with terror and a strange expression on this day. The spiritual chi rain was still pattering down. Bufong lay leisurely on the deck of the ship, while Vermilion Bird sat beside him, tied up. She looked aggrieved. She stared at Bufong with her big eyes and continued to act cute. It was useless, but she never got tired of it. These days, Bufong had tried to cook some dishes to conquer her, but none of them seemed to work. Senior, all of a sudden, Yuge ran out of the cabin in horror, followed by Chief Luo, Xiao Ai, and the others. The captain of the Jewel, a foreigner with thick eyebrows and big eyes, was also there. What's wrong? Bufong opened his sleepy eyes. Bufong was a man who liked to find silence in the midst of chaos. To put simply, he liked to be lazy. Even though he knew that the world had changed drastically, he was still very calm. In fact, everyone on the ship had been crazy for a long time. Some of them could not even sleep at night. Earth seems to have grown bigger. Yuge looked at Bufong in horror and swallowed. Huh. Bufong gave Yuge a puzzled look. Under normal circumstances, we should be able to reach China's coastline in a day. But it's been so long, and we haven't arrived yet. Yuge said. He had a bold idea. Earth must have grown bigger, so our journey back home has become much longer. Yuge seemed a little incredulous. The area of Earth could actually grow bigger. What kind of concept was that? That's normal. The increase in the concentration of spiritual energy has caused a great change in the world. The original Earth could not support this amount of spiritual energy, so after absorbing it, Earth began to grow bigger and expand. Bufong yawned. This was normal, and Bufong thought they all knew. Earth has grown bigger. Bigger. Yuge was dumbfounded. Behind him, Chief Luo, the monk, and the others also gasped. The foreign captain, on the other hand, had an unsightly look on his face. The area of Earth had grown bigger, and the jewel did not have enough fuel to support its return to the port. In this regard, Bufang also thought of a solution. He patted Xiaopi on the head, and the latter dove into the sea. A moment later, a giant whale leaped out of the sea. Water vapor gushed out of its pores. Under Xiaopi's command, it dragged the jewel toward the coast at high speed. Everyone on the ship also experienced the feeling of racing a ship. They soon reached the coast. After disembarking from the jewel, Bufang did not say goodbye to them. He took Vermilion Bird and left. Yuge and the others took deep breaths as they watched Bufang leave. Meanwhile, Chief Luo contacted the headquarters and began to learn about the changes in the world. Yuge hurried back to the immortal island of Penglai. They all knew that something big was about to happen on Earth. Bufang walked on the street. As he walked in the city, the feeling became more and more obvious. The roads in the city had become much wider, and the gaps between houses had been lengthened. It was as if the whole ground had been stretched out like plasticine. This was the change brought about by the recovery of spiritual energy. However, the impact of this change on society was not that great. Pedestrians hurried along the street. Many people were nervous and busy. Most people were still running around for survival. Bufang looked at Vermilion Bird, who followed him obediently, and raised his eyebrows. If he wanted to conquer her, he would have to cater to her preferences. What do you like to eat? Bufang asked Vermilion Bird. Vermilion Bird blinked at Bufang. Do you like vegetables or meat? Bufang continued to ask. You're a bird. Do you like to eat bugs? Bufang asked after thinking for a moment. Vermilion Bird blinked. The corner of Bufang's mouth twitched. He raised his hand and hit her on the forehead with a hammer. Speak human language, Bufang said expressionlessly. Vermilion Bird's face stiffened. I want to eat a dragon. She opened her mouth. It was still Fusang's familiar voice. Dragon? You want to eat Nicholas the Handsome Dragon? What grudge do you have against him? Bufang was taken aback. We're both artifact spirits. Why make things difficult for them? She rolled her eyes. She couldn't communicate with him anymore. The corner of Bufang's mouth twitched. He understood what she meant. If she wanted to eat a dragon, he would go find one. On the immortal island of Penglai, on an island shrouded in immortal energy, Patriarch Penglai looked excitedly at the sky. A few old men clad in fluttering robes were waiting beside Patriarch Penglai. The spiritual energy ceiling point in Siberia is occupied by the forces of the Western Church. I can't believe a black pot appeared there. A red-faced old man said, somewhat speechless. A red-faced old man said, somewhat speechlessly. He had failed in the battle for the spiritual chi ceiling point. A black pot? What's so strange about that? I saw a stove in the spiritual energy ceiling point in the Dead Sea. AF * King Stove. Another old man said, speechless. I'm also wondering why the spiritual energy ceiling point only contains cooking utensils used by chefs. Could it be the immortal emperor who loves to cook sealed his cooking utensils there? They talked among themselves. Suddenly, the altar on it began to glow. Patriarch Penglai and the others became excited as they looked at the altar. The immortals have returned. All the chi cultivators on Penglai Island knelt down to welcome the creatures that were about to appear on the altar. Rumbling sounds rang out over the altar. There seemed to be colorful lights connecting them. In the next moment, the seven-colored brilliance turned into a rainbow bridge. One corner of the rainbow bridge seemed to be connected to a chaotic land. None of the chi cultivators on Penglai Island dared to look up. Welcome, exalted immortals. All the disciples of Penglai Immortal Island greeted him respectfully. On the rainbow bridge, silver bells rang, immortal music played, and clusters of flowers appeared, looking gorgeous and enchanting. One fairy maiden after another, clad in colorful immortal dresses, walked out of the bridge on both sides, their feet bare and their petals scattered. The middle of the rainbow bridge was shrouded in auspicious clouds. Above the auspicious clouds, sage-like immortals floated out of it. The immortals came in different shapes. Some carried swords, some held knives, some held horsetail whisks, some rode leopards, and some carried pagodas. All kinds of immortals walked out of the Rainbow Bridge. Patriarch Punlai was very excited. Many immortals were existences in myths and legends, but at this moment, they had really appeared. However, after those immortals walked out of the Rainbow Bridge, they stood on both sides as if an immortal court had arrived. At this moment, on the Rainbow Bridge, an old man wearing a black brocade robe embroidered with golden patterns flew out of the Rainbow Bridge while sitting on an auspicious cloud. A golden halo was hovering behind his head. "Welcome, Sect Master." Patriarch Punglai's face became more and more excited. When he saw this supreme existence, he bowed his head deeply. In the west, on top of a towering mountain, there was a temple. The seawater churned, then suddenly solidified and turned into a human figure. Holding the trident in his hand, Poseidon stared at the sky, which was filled with thunder and lightning. A look of hope emerged on his face. Over there, a rainbow bridge of 7 colors appeared. From it, one barefoot god after another walked out. Thousands of rays of light shone brilliantly, and their divine power descended upon the world. The gods have returned. Poseidon was very excited. Thunder rumbled. A figure stepped on lightning and walked out from it. He was extremely handsome. At this moment, all kinds of gods were descending from every corner of the world. There were also all kinds of strange creatures crawling out of the huge black hole. If there were scholars who specialized in mythology, they might be able to recognize that these creatures that crawled out of the black hole were actually the gods that were recorded in the records of various countries. The arrival of the gods had caused the spiritual energy on Earth to become even denser, causing the spiritual energy to become extremely restless. The living beings on Earth respectfully greeted these gods. They were looking forward to the oracle of the gods. However, to everyone's surprise, the first thing these gods said was about the treasures that had appeared in the spiritual energy sealing points. The gods had decreed that they must seize the divine artifacts that sealed Earth's spiritual energy at all costs. As soon as the news came out, the whole Earth was boiling again. Bufong did not know that the god of cooking Set had become the target of the gods who had just descended from all over the world. At this moment, he was thinking about how to find a dragon. Vermilion Bird had a strong taste. She wanted to eat dragon meat, but the dragon meat in the system storage space had long been used up. The Heaven and Earth farmland could not be opened, and the top grade dragon meat inside could not be used. Therefore, Bufong could only consider finding a dragon on Earth and making it into a dish. However, how to find a dragon was a problem. It was late at night. The sky was dark, and only the bright moon hung in the sky, shining brightly. Bufong suddenly stopped walking. He looked up at the sky. A 7-colored light suddenly appeared in the sky above the city. The light fell and enveloped thousands of miles. The people in the city were already in an uproar. Bufong, on the other hand, let out a soft cry of surprise. Within the brilliance, figures descended one after another. Immortal energy rose from those figures, and there were phoenixes and silver dragons hovering. Silver dragons? Bufong's eyes suddenly lit up. Chapter 16:18. Bufong looked at the figures falling from the sky. The appearance of the silhouette had already caused a commotion in the city. Everyone raised their heads and exclaimed in surprise when they saw that scene. Colorful light, the auspicious sign of a dragon and a phoenix. This was the sign of the arrival of immortals. Ordinary people could also sense the changes in the world. After all, the distance between work and home had increased several times. They could feel it even with their eyes closed. The various countries also spread the news of the special ability users to their people. This news caused a great response among the people. No one expected that the talk of immortals would become a reality. The superhuman organization in Jiangdong received the news immediately. Chief Luo led his team of superhumans and rushed toward the location where the immortals were descending. Helicopters, armored vehicles, and other means of transportation were used. Chief Luo sat in the armored vehicle with a worried look on his face. The main reason was that the great changes in the current era were not good for people. There were too many almighty beings, and once some crazy almighty beings appeared, it would be a disaster for ordinary people. The power of technology was too weak in front of these people. Fortunately, because of the recovery of spiritual energy, scientists, on the other hand, have found a way to integrate spiritual energy into weapons. These spiritual weapons were specifically used to deal with the so-called immortals and the like. In fact, in Chief Luo's opinion, these so-called immortals were just some powerful superhumans. Those superhumans had been hiding somewhere before, but now that the world had awakened, they had come out to stir up trouble. It's a dragon. Heavens! There really are dragons in the world. Not just dragons. There are also phoenixes. This is amazing. There really are immortals in the world. Everyone was exclaiming. They were extremely shocked, pointing at the immortals in the sky, who were blooming with colorful light, and talking about them. For a moment, photos, videos, and images were all spread on the internet. The internet was in an uproar. It took Chief Luo and his superhuman team members a great deal of effort to isolate the civilians and squeeze into the battlefield. However, when he saw the scene on the battlefield, Chief Luo was stunned. Xiao AI, who was following behind him, also had her mouth wide open. Chief Luo, it's Senior. The small eyes under Xiao AI's glasses were quite cute and full of excitement. After what happened on the Jewel, Xiao AI had absolute faith in Bufang. If it weren't for Bufang, she would have been dead by now. So now, like Yugu, he called Bufang Senior. She felt that Bufang deserved to be called that. Senior, are you confronting an immortal? That's an immortal. Senior, you must be in trouble. Xiao AI looked at the situation with a worried expression on her face. Chief Luo pursed his lips and didn't say anything. Instead, he gestured to the members of the Special Abilities Bureau to prepare for battle. Immortals were just things of legends, and it was unknown whether they were kind to the people. The reason for the existence of the Special Abilities Bureau was to protect the people, so he had to be fully prepared. However, at least there was one thing that Bufang would not harm the people. Chief Luo could feel it. The corners of Bufang's mouth curled up slightly. He did not expect that there would be ingredients delivered to his doorstep by himself. Immortals? What were immortals? In Bufang's eyes, there were only ingredients. A silver dragon and a colorful phoenix. As soon as this mythical scene appeared, an ordinary person would have knelt on the ground and kowtowed to pray for blessings. However, Bufang wasn't like that. Instead, he revealed a look of excitement. His eyes gleamed as he stared at the silver dragon. He was just worried that there was no place to catch a dragon, and now a dragon had delivered itself to him. Thus, there were a total of 4 immortals standing on auspicious clouds. 2 of them were sage-like, while the other 2 were clad in silver armor and looked like divine generals of the heaven. Found it. An old man in a Taoist robe stroked his white beard and chuckled. Yes, I didn't expect a primitive divine artifact to be right under our noses. This saves us a lot of trouble. Stepping on the silver dragon, an armored immortal said softly, "We returned to Earth from the primitive universe. We were guided by the saints, so these divine artifacts are destined to be ours." The old man's Taoist robe fluttered in the wind. His gaze swept across the entire city. When he saw the surprised and respectful citizens, his face twitched slightly and showed a disdainful smile. So many years have passed, but these mortals haven't changed. They're still as ignorant as ever. The old man shook his head. Don't talk nonsense, true immortal. The will of the people is also related to the true meaning of cultivation for us immortals. Another old man in a white immortal robe said, glancing at the old man. That's the true meaning of cultivation for us in the primordial era. We've created a world in the primitive universe and no longer need such primitive methods of cultivation. I can kill these ignorant citizens with a wave of my hand. The heavenly Tao of the ancestral planet won't affect us either. The old man said with a smile. The other immortals frowned. Although they did not agree, they did not refute it. Clearly, The old man was speaking the truth. All right, that's enough chatting. Let's move quickly. The sect master is still waiting, the old man said. In the next moment, his gaze fell on Bu Fong. He looked down at Bu Fong as if he was looking at a primitive mortal. Who goes there? An innocent man will get into trouble because of his wealth. Such a divine artifact is not something mortals like you can possess. Hand it over now, and I'll spare your life, the old man scolded. The old man spoke. It was as if the whole city was shaking. The majestic and supreme voice continued to resound. The people down below boiled with excitement. The immortal had spoken. Chief Luo and the others tensed up as well. Is that a true dragon? Bu Fong asked, licking his lips as he looked at the proud old man. Everyone was taken aback when they heard the question. The old man couldn't help but narrow his eyes. Of course it's a true dragon. The armored immortal, standing on the silver dragon, proudly said. The silver dragon seemed to understand the armored immortal's words. It raised its head and roared. The dragon's roar shook the heavens. When the people down below heard the dragon's roar, they knelt on the ground in fear. Damn it, it's a true dragon. It's not a special effect. I thought it was a special effect, but it's really a dragon. How frightening. It's a little scary. Can a dragon eat a man? The people down below were shivering with fear. Click, click, click. The sound of camera shutters rang out incessantly. It's good that it's a true dragon. The corners of Bu Fong's mouth curved upward. The next moment, he stomped his foot on the ground. With a rumbling sound, a gust of wind blew across the ground. Bu Fong's figure shot up into the sky, clenching his fists as he charged toward the true dragon. How dare you? The armored general bellowed. Immortal energy surged around him, and a curved, snake-shaped sword fell into his hand. Then he swung it toward Bu Fong. The silver dragon also opened its mouth and spewed out silver flames. Rumble. A rumbling sound spread out. The people down below were stunned. This dreamlike scene completely frightened them. Boom! The sword light and the dragon's breath instantly engulfed Bu Fong. Ha! What a foolish mortal. You only know how to act recklessly. The old man flicked his horsetail whisk and smiled faintly. His voice was full of disdain. They were lofty immortals, and yet Bu Fong dared to attack them. It should be noted that they were human immortals. They were not existences that mortals could resist. Evacuate the crowd. Chief Luo's pupils constricted as soon as he saw the battle break out. He roared. The superhumans of the state's supernatural bureau hurriedly took action. As the dragon's breath fell, the ground burst into flames. The people were so frightened that they fled in a hurry. These so-called immortals did not care about the lives of the mortals down below. Boom! The flames exploded. Bu Fong shot up into the sky. He was unscathed. The armored general's pupils constricted. Silver dragon, attack! He bellowed, his face grave. The snake-shaped sword slashed out, turning into thousands of sword beams. Boom! 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 The sword chi slashed at the surrounding high-rise buildings, causing the glass on the buildings to shatter one after another. Bu Fong furrowed his brows and glanced at the fleeing crowd. Then, he turned to the four immortals and breathed a sigh of relief. The silver dragon struck out with its claw, which instantly enveloped Bu Fong with immortal energy swirling around it. The sword beams and the dragon claw fell at the same time. This mortal is really arrogant. His aura doesn't look very strong, but he dares to fight the heavenly court's divine general head-on. In the distance, the three immortals looked as if they were watching a good show. As for the shockwaves, they did not care at all. Boom! When the sword beams and the dragon claw smashed into Bu Fong, the corners of the divine general's mouth curved upward slightly. Mortals were, after all, mortals. Tear him to pieces. This is your dinner. Silver dragon, the divine general said, smiling. He was full of confidence. Suddenly, his eyes narrowed. He heard the sound of bones breaking. The silver dragon let out a miserable howl. The claws of the silver dragon under his feet exploded and turned into a bloody mist. When the sword beams struck Bu Fong, they only produced a clanging sound. What's going on? The divine general froze. However, Bufong did not give him time to recover. He jumped up and landed on the silver dragon's back. As for the divine general, he was sent flying away by a slap from Bufong. It's a true dragon. Looks like we can get our hands on the dragon meat, Bufong said. He muttered to himself, but the silver dragon beneath his feet shuddered. The divine general was furious. Put down my dragon. Holding the snake-shaped sword, the divine general forced Bufong to come to him. The sword slashed down. An immortal light shone in all directions. Bufong gave him an indifferent look. Grabbing the silver dragon's horn, he flew up into the sky. Under Bufong's despotic power, the silver dragon could only follow him. If it didn't fly, its horn would be broken. The three immortals who were watching were shocked. How could this mortal be so fierce? Right? This mortal has a divine artifact that can seal the spiritual energy on Earth. We can't underestimate him. Let's fight him together. The three immortals exchanged a look. One by one, they rushed into the sky. The four immortals attacked at the same time. Four immortals fighting a mortal. At this moment, the breathing of the crowd below had quickened. The news was spreading on the internet. Countless people were watching closely. Chief Luo and Xiao AI stared at the sky. Chief Luo, Senior should win. Senior can defeat Susanoo of Sakura Island with one punch, Xiao AI said nervously. Chief Luo was silent. How could Susanoo of Sakura Island compare to these four immortals? According to the information he received, the weakest immortal who had entered Earth was stronger than the patriarch of the immortal island of Penglai. Patriarch Penglai was a real immortal, an Earth immortal. He was an existence that surpassed SS-class superhumans. It would be fine if there was only one immortal, but there were four of them. Senior was in danger. Chief Luo heaved a long sigh. Suddenly, in the sky, the dragon and the phoenix screamed miserably. Then a rumble echoed out. A figure fell from the sky, smashing the ground, shattering it. The man who fell was not Bufong, but the old man in a Taoist robe who had ruled the world with the air of a transcendent being. Chief Luo's face stiffened. The slap came too fast, like a tornado. Chapter 1619. No one had expected that it would be the sage-like old man in a Taoist robe who fell. The people present were stunned. How could they not be curious about a fight between immortals? Many people watched curiously from a distance. The four immortals in the sky were extremely ethereal. They stood on auspicious clouds and looked like immortals. Everyone thought that they were supreme and invincible beings. In the end, the development of things was completely beyond their expectations. In just a short while, the old man fell from the sky and smashed into the ground, shattering it. Chief Luo and Xiao AI's eyes lit up. Sure enough, Senior was still his senior. Boom, boom. Two more figures fell. They were the other two immortals. Their sage-like demeanor had long since disappeared, and now they looked extremely wretched. The immortals got up from the ground, somewhat confused. They did not seem to understand why Bufong could suppress them. A miserable scream rang out. The dragon-riding divine general fell from the sky. The armor on his body was already riddled with holes, and it was constantly shattering. His eyes had turned scarlet red. Everyone could not help but exclaim. This was so exciting. He was fighting against four immortals alone, and he had actually suppressed them so badly. He was so handsome. All the people were extremely excited. The old man in the Taoist robe was somewhat violent. They had returned from the primitive universe and wanted to be the patriarchs of Earth, but they were suppressed by a mortal. The mortal's aura was clearly very weak, but he had beaten them so hard that they could not fight back. Slash! Clouds shrouded the sky. The silver dragon's body was faintly visible, and it let out a miserable cry. The divine general's face was pale, and his pupils constricted. That mortal has a divine artifact that has sealed a quarter of Earth's spiritual energy. It's normal that we're no match for him. The immortal-robed old man took a deep breath. As they thought about this, their hearts became even greedier. No wonder the sect leader values the divine artifact so much. It's indeed extraordinary. It can actually give a mortal the power to fight against us. The old man was even more greedy. With a flip of his hand, a sword appeared in it. This is one of the sect leader's 4 swords. This sword will definitely be able to kill that demon and seize the divine weapon. In the distance, the 2 divine generals also looked over. Yes, use it quickly. Hurry up and say my silver dragon. The immortal general was furious. The next moment, the old man's eyes narrowed, and he blew out a mouthful of immortal chi. The sword in his hand soared into the sky. Rumble, the moment the sword appeared. The entire Jiangdong city was shaking, and the gravel on the ground kept rolling. Many tall buildings shook violently as if they were about to collapse at any time. Chief Luo, Xiao Ai, and many other Arcanists' faces changed drastically, and their faces were filled with horror. They could sense a terrifying aura from the sword in the old man's hand. What is that? Xiao Ai's heart trembled. She looked at the computer in her hand. Poochie! The computer screen exploded and sparks flew everywhere. This caused her face to turn even paler. The spiritual energy on the sword had already exceeded the range that the computer could detect. Chief Luo sucked in a breath of cold air and roared at the superhumans behind him. Quick! Evacuate the crowd. Get everyone out of here. Chief Luo's face was full of terror. The superhumans immediately moved out. In the distance, the mortals who were watching the show also felt terrified. Immediately, they couldn't be bothered to watch the show anymore. They fled in all directions as if they had gone mad. This demon must die. The old man in the Taoist robe was extremely fanatical. Looking at the green sword in his hand, he felt his mind become clear. Then, he suddenly let go of it. The sword whistled through the air and shot toward Bu Fong in the sky. Although it was only a simulation, it had a portion of the sect leader's immortal sword's power. Mortals could not stop it, and even heaven immortals could not. The 4 superhumans never thought that they would be forced by Bu Fong to use such a trick. The sect leader's sword had a famous name in the primitive universe. The 4 immortal swords. It was a green sword, and its name was Immortal Extermination. Boom! A green sword soared into the sky. Blasts of air swept out in all directions. Half of Jiangdong City was trembling, and the roads were cracking. There seemed to be steam rising from the cracks. The sword energy was dazzling like the sun in the dark night, bright and dazzling. In the sky, Bu Fong was holding a beast in each hand. In his left hand was a colorful phoenix, and in his right was a silver dragon. Both the phoenix and the dragon's aura were weak. In ancient myths, dragons and phoenixes represented auspiciousness. However, in Bu Fong's eyes, these 2 beasts were filled with hostility and bloodlust. In Bu Fong's god of cooking's eye, these dragons and phoenixes were incompatible with auspiciousness. That was why Bu Fong wanted to kill them. They were beasts that had eaten humans. If they were real auspicious beasts, Bu Fong would not have killed them. The phoenix screamed miserably, but its eyes were filled with ferocity. Then, Bu Fong shoved it into the system's storage space. As for the silver dragon, Bu Fong was going to cook it on the spot. However, just as Bu Fong was about to make his move, a beam of sword energy broke through the cloud from below, and the air seemed to explode. The sword energy was terrifying. Bu Fong raised his eyebrows, and a look of surprise flashed in his eyes. The power of the sword was extraordinary. It was almost as strong as the strike of a high-grade god in the chaotic universe. In fact, after so many days, Bu Fong had a clear understanding of the strength levels of the immortals on Earth and those in the chaotic universe. There was no need to mention Earth immortals. Human immortals were equivalent to demigods in the chaotic universe, while heaven immortals were equivalent to real gods. Above them were immortal kings and immortal emperors, which corresponded to god kings and god emperors. Of course, there might be a slight difference in strength, but the difference would not be too obvious. As for whether immortal kings or god kings were stronger, Bu Fong did not know. At this moment, the sword energy whistling up from below made Bufong feel that it was powerful enough to kill ordinary heaven immortals. Its power was almost equal to the attack of a high-grade god. Bufong held the silver dragon with one hand. At this moment, the silver dragon was lying limply in Bufong's hand like a loach that had lost its life. The sword whistled through the air. A clanging sound rang out. Boiling immortal energy came with a terrible sharpness. Bufong raised his eyebrows slightly. It's not bad, but it's a pity it's just a fake. The corner of Bufong's mouth twitched slightly. Rumble. A dazzling light burst out of the god of cooking's eye, which seemed to be able to see through heaven and earth. The movement of his hand holding the silver dragon did not slow down. Slash! The dragon tendon was pulled out and the dragon skin was peeled off. With a flick of Bufong's finger, the silver divine flame burst into a blaze and engulfed the whole dragon in a flash. Crackle! The silver dragon was roasted in a flash, and a rich meaty aroma began to drift between heaven and earth. Everyone was dumbfounded. The four immortals were dumbstruck. The divine general's heart ached, and he was furious. That damned evil man! How dare he cook my silver dragon? His silver dragon was a demon dragon. In the primitive universe, it had devoured countless mortals. Its strength was no weaker than ordinary immortals, and it had followed him to conquer the primitive universe. But now, the silver dragon was cooked by a mere demon. Chief Luo and Xiao AI sucked in cold breaths. Many people could not believe what they saw. Senior is too fierce. That's a dragon. Senior roasted it just like that? It smells so good. I wonder if roasted dragon meat tastes good. I heard that dragon meat is very nutritious. Chief Luo, Xiao AI, and the other superhumans sucked in cold breaths. Swish! The immortal exterminating sword was closing in on Bufong. It was less than an inch away from Bufong. Bufong's face was expressionless. He was still roasting the silver dragon. Die! The old man in the Taoist robe bellowed, his beard and hair standing on end. The divine general was furious. Kill him! The eyes of the old man and the other divine general were also shining brightly. The power of the immortal exterminating sword was extraordinary. However, Bufong did not even frown. Rumble. The immortal exterminating sword drew a terrible arc of sword light and stabbed Bufong's chest. In a flash, a gust of wind blew. The clouds in the sky were blown away, revealing Bufong's figure. His vermilion robe, alternating between red and white, fluttered in the wind. The sword stabbed Bufong's chest. The tip of the sword kept surging with sword light. However, no matter how the sword energy of the immortal exterminating sword moved, it could not move an inch forward, nor did it cause any harm to Bufong's body. If the original sword was here, it might be a threat, but it's just an imitation. Bufong twitched the corner of his mouth. With one hand, he roasted the silver dragon. With the other, he grabbed the immortal exterminating sword. Light surged on his Taotai arm, and the energies of yin and yang circulated. With a squelch, the trump card of the four immortals, the so-called clone of the sect leader's immortal artifact, was crushed by Bufong. The blue light exploded. It turned into sword fragments that littered the ground. The four immortals were dumbstruck, retreating in disbelief. The face of the old man in the Taoist robe, who controlled the immortal sword, was flushed. Blood spurted from his mouth as if he had been struck by a terrible force, and he was sent flying backward. The three immortals hurried to catch him, their eyes filled with shock. The immortal exterminating sword had been crushed. That was the clone of the sect leader's immortal artifact. Even heaven immortals would retreat when they saw it. This demon actually crushed the immortal sword with his bare hands. That's a Tao law. No, it's not a Tao law. This evil man is not from the ancestral planet. With a look of disbelief on his face, the old man in the Taoist robe suddenly roared. In the sky, Bufong crushed the immortal exterminating sword as if he had just crushed something insignificant. He didn't seem to mind it at all. He waved his hand. The silver dragon burned and soared into the sky. Under the control of Bufong's divine sense, it shrank into a ball. Bu Fong spread his hands, manipulating the broken pieces of the immortal exterminating sword. The pieces of the sword whistled as they flew out, opening many wounds on the silver dragon's body. The wounds split open and widened in an instant, exposing the white and tender flesh. Oil flowed out of it, and the dragon meat was snow-white and fragrant. Down below, Vermilion Bird's mouth was wide open, drooling. She was very excited. The people around her sucked in their breaths. Heavens! He's really roasting the dragon as an ingredient. With a thought in his mind, seasonings flew out of the system's storage space and sprinkled some powder on the meat. The aroma of the dragon meat became more alluring and rich. The divine general was so angry that he almost vomited blood. This evil man has gone too far. Mulberry, here's your dragon meat. In the sky, Bu Fong's faint voice rang out. The Vermilion Bird Mulberry's eyes immediately lit up. Then, she stomped her long white legs on the ground. Bam! The ground exploded in an instant. In an instant, Mulberry's figure soared into the sky. The four immortals and the people around them were shocked. This woman also had such divine power. The next moment, something even more shocking happened. The woman with fiery red hair transformed in the wind. Her robe exploded into pieces, revealing her fair and tender skin. Fire-like feathers grew out of her body. Then, a huge flaming vermilion bird appeared. With a cry, it spread its wings and soared into the sky. It soared up. The vermilion bird's eyes were full of excitement, and her mouth was wide open. Bu Fong grabbed the roasted silver dragon meat and threw it. The oily silver dragon flew toward the vermilion bird. The vermilion bird spread its wings, and its cry soared into the sky. Then, it held the silver dragon in its mouth as if it was holding a bug. The vermilion bird's body was extremely huge. Compared to it, the silver dragon was indeed like a bug. The four divine beasts. The southern flame vermilion bird. The four immortals were terrified. In the primitive universe, the four divine beasts were supreme existences. They were existences comparable to immortal emperors. How could the vermilion bird appear here? Gulp. The silver dragon meat was swallowed. In the sky, the corners of Bu Fong's mouth twitched slightly. All the people down below were shocked and dumbfounded. After eating the silver dragon, the vermilion bird seemed to have achieved a qualitative sublimation. Bu Fong's eyes, which were very strange to him, suddenly became familiar. The vermilion bird opened its mouth and let out a cry. The next moment, it turned into a beam of fire and burrowed into Bu Fong's forehead. Bam! 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 The vermilion robe on Bu Fong's body flapped noisily. At this moment, Bu Fong's aura suddenly expanded. The god of cooking's eye opened. Bu Fong's aura rose steadily, and a beam of light soared into the sky. It completely illuminated the dark night. His aura began to twirl. At this moment, Bu Fong's aura, which was incompatible with Earth, became harmonious. Even though Bu Fong's aura was completely unleashed now, it did not seem to affect him. Perhaps it was because the spiritual energy the vermilion bird breathed came from a quarter of Earth's spiritual energy. In his spirit sea, the vermilion bird returned. As the flame spread, the spirit sea began to boil. At this moment, Bu Fong's divine sense was completely sublimated. The four immortals down below began to tremble. What a terrible aura! An immortal king. This evil man is actually an immortal king. Run! The four immortals did not hesitate. They turned, stepped on auspicious clouds, and were about to fly into the sky and flee. Bu Fong's body withstood the beam of light that soared into the sky. He raised his head and looked at the boundless void. It was as if he had sensed a supreme will, and the pressure that the supreme will was exerting on him had weakened significantly. The corner of Bu Fong's mouth twitched slightly. Then, he turned to look at the four immortals who were fleeing frantically. He held up a finger. As his finger fell, the four immortals howled miserably. Accompanied by their cries, their bodies were ground to pieces. How could these human immortals resist Bu Fong, who had recovered some of his strength? He could kill them with one breath. On the immortal island of Penglai, the moment Bufang killed the four immortals, an expert sitting cross-legged on a cloud with a seven-colored halo behind his head slowly opened his eyes and let out a soft cry of surprise. Chapter 16:20. At this moment, the air became much quieter. Everyone on the ground was dumbstruck, their mouths wide open and their faces full of horror. They stared blankly at the empty ground. There were four immortals there, but with just a touch of Bufang's finger, they had disappeared in an instant. What kind of technique was this? How could he kill immortals as easily as wiping away dust? Who exactly was this senior? Chief Luo's legs were shaking. Even though he was experienced and knowledgeable, he still felt like he was dreaming. He could not tell who Bufang was. He was good at cooking, and his fighting prowess was so terrifying. When he first met Bufang, he thought Bufang was just an ordinary man, but that was not the case. Not only was Bufang not an ordinary man, but he was also a terrifying existence with extraordinary fighting prowess. Xiao Ai clenched her fists excitedly. She had no feelings for those immortals. Those so-called immortals looked at them as if they were looking at ants. That kind of high and mighty gaze made Xiao Ai feel disgusted from the bottom of her heart. However, Xiao Ai's admiration for Bufang was growing. Senior is so handsome. Retracting his aura, Bufang descended from the sky and landed steadily on the ground. Bufang's expression was the same as ever, as if killing an immortal was no different from wiping away dust. His calmness amazed everyone. Senior, just like Xiao Ai, Chief Luo called Bufang Senior. With Bufang's current strength, he deserved such a title. In his opinion, Bufang might be an antique who had crawled out of some place. Otherwise, how could he have such fighting prowess? In today's era of spiritual energy recovery and great changes in the world, even superhumans could not stir up much trouble. Only antiques like Bufang could. Bufang clasped his hands behind his back, his vermilion robe looking very ordinary. Bufang glanced indifferently at Chief Luo, who was feverish and nervous in the distance. These so-called immortals are not here with good intentions. Be careful, Bufang reminded him. Chief Luo was already aware of this. After all, those immortals were wantonly fighting in the city and did not care about human lives at all. This made Chief Luo feel an inexplicable anger. Bufang nodded. That was all he could say. As for what Chief Luo and the others did, Bufang didn't care. In reality, the power of those immortals far exceeded that of the mortals present. If the immortals were to attack without restraint, it would be a disaster for the entire world. Senior, are you going to look for other artifacts now? Just as Bufang was about to turn around and leave, Xiao Ai, whose eyes were shining, suddenly opened her mouth and said to Bufang. Bufang paused. He knew that the divine artifact Xiao Ai mentioned was the god of cooking set. The artifact spirits of the god of cooking sets were distributed all over the world. The vermilion robe, for example, was located in the South Sea. Moreover, as the seal was broken, it was likely that the god of cooking set had fallen into the hands of various powers. Of course, Bufang couldn't just watch the god of cooking sets fall into the hands of other forces, even if those forces couldn't use them. Only Bufang could use what belonged to Bufang. However, Bufang still felt that it was best to keep it in his hands. Our country's state supernatural agency has the most accurate information about these divine artifacts. Xiao Ai's eyes were still shining as she stared at Bufang. Oh, Bufang raised his eyebrows slightly. Chief Luo also came to his senses at this moment. Xiao Ai was planning to tie Bufang's thigh to the state's supernatural agency. However, Chief Luo naturally would not refuse. Yes, Senior, our agency has world-class equipment and a world-class intelligence network. We can get any news about the divine artifacts as soon as possible. Chief Luo nodded hastily. Bufang thought for a moment. Although he could clearly sense the aura and location of the other god of cooking sets after the vermilion bird returned, he could still clearly sense them. However, With the state's supernatural agency's help, he might be able to better understand the powers that had obtained the god of cooking sets. Of course, there is another important point. For example, the vermilion bird could transform into vermilion bird lady, and the black turtle and white tiger could also transform into humans. In that case, the key was to find them. Bufong was good at finding the god of cooking sets, but he had to rely on other means to find people. Besides, Bufong still needed to find Yu's location. It might be easier to find her with the state's supernatural agency's help. This was because Bufong did not refuse their kindness. When Chief Luo and Xiao AI saw that Bufong did not refuse them, they became excited. Just as they were about to get into the car and leave, suddenly, Bufong, half of his body in the armored car, frowned slightly. He raised his head and looked up at the sky. He had killed 4 immortals, and now someone was finally going to do something about it. Chief Luo and the others also looked up at the sky. They saw an unruly old man in a Taoist robe and riding a black panther in the sky. The old man hovered in midair, his eyes flashing. At a glance, he saw Bufong down below. The man came to the top of Bufong and the others, grinning, revealing a mouthful of uneven teeth. "Fellow Taoist, please wait a moment," the old Taoist said with a smile. However, his smile gave people the feeling that it was a fake smile. "Oh," Bufong narrowed his eyes. He could feel that the old man was very strong, at least much stronger than the immortal he had just killed. A heaven immortal? An old Taoist riding a panther? Could it be the legendary Shun Gongpao? Chief Luo was very knowledgeable. In fact, many superhumans have been asked to learn a lot about ancient myths and legends. The recovery of spiritual energy had let them know that those ancient immortals did exist. Shen Gongpao. Bufong paused. Of course he knew this guy. He heard that he was quite famous in myths and legends. "Fellow Taoist, did you see 4 immortals flying over here just now?" Shen Gongpao, riding on the Black Panther, narrowed his eyes. The Black Panther beneath him also learned from him and narrowed its eyes. The man and the panther moved in sync. Shen Gongpao was a very cautious man. The sect leader had sent him here to investigate the destruction of the immortal exterminating sword. However, he did not act rashly. Since the enemy could destroy the immortal exterminating sword, it meant that the enemy was not weak. 4 immortals? The corner of Bufong's mouth twitched slightly. "Yes, I crush him to death with a finger," Ling Xian said. Bufong looked at Shun Gongpao and said. In the sky, Shun Gongpao narrowed his eyes, his beard fluttering in the wind. He could not believe that there was someone better at bragging than him. "Are you joking, Your Excellency? If you see them, please tell me. If the sect leader blames you, I'm afraid you won't be able to bear the consequences." The smile on Shun Gongpao's face gradually disappeared. "Your panther is not bad." Bufong narrowed his eyes and looked at the panther under Shun Gongpao. The panther, who was squinting with Shun Gongpao, suddenly shivered. "I told you that I killed 4 immortals with a finger. It's up to you whether you believe me or not. If the sect leader blames me, let him come and see me in person." Bufong's expression faded, and he answered expressionlessly. "What an arrogant young man." Shen Gongpao was shocked. Shen Gongbao was shocked. How could the sect leader meet a demon man like you? Shen Gongbao was shocked by the divine light that burst out from his place. Now, it seemed that it was really done by this young man. Why is he so confident? It seems this evil man has some tricks up his sleeve. The old Taoist narrowed his eyes. "I'll give it a try." Shen Gongpao chuckled. Then, he patted the Black Panther under him. Boom! A black aura spread in an instant. The Black Panther suddenly opened its mouth and let out a roar. Countless shadows of leopards shot out from the Black Panther beneath him, dashing toward Bufong as if they wanted to tear him to shreds. Each of these panthers had a real body, and they were extremely ferocious. This was Shun Gongpao's specialty. After all, he was a heaven immortal expert. He was very strong. At least, he was stronger than the 4 immortals. However, Chief Luo, Xiao AI, and the others did not show the slightest worry. The people down below were not worried, either. Bufong was too strong. He had killed 4 immortals with a finger. They were not afraid of Shun Gongpao anymore. Bufang's face was cold. He did not know who was behind Shin Gongpao and the 4 immortals. Who was the sect leader they were talking about? However, Bufang did not care. No matter who he was, he would kill him with a punch. Facing the tens of thousands of Black Panthers that were swooping down on him, Bufang took a deep breath. Then he raised his fist. Rumble, his divine power swirled, causing heaven and earth to tremble and clamor. The next moment, Bufang swung his Tao Tai arm. The punch flew out in an instant. Shin Gongpao's expression changed in an instant. One by one, the Black Panthers in the sky exploded. The punch crushed everything and went straight toward Shin Gongpao. Ouch! Shin Gongpao was startled. He slapped the panther on the head. His Taoist robe fell off his body and turned into a huge cloth that blotted out the sky, trying to block Bufang's punch. However, the punch tore his robe apart. Slash! Shin Gongpao coughed up blood. Not daring to say anything, he dragged his seriously injured body away on the panther. If he ran any slower, he might really have to stay here. Oh! Bufang looked at Shin Gongpao, who was bare-chested and riding away on his leopard. He did not expect that Shin Gongpao could survive his punch. How could an ordinary heaven immortal block his punch? Even if Bufang was not in his peak condition, of course, Bufang did not care. He did not use any strength in that punch. Chief Luo and Xiao Ai also looked regretful. They felt it was a pity that Bufang did not kill Shin Gongpao with one punch. Of course, Bufang did not know what they were feeling regretful about. Let's go, Bufang said to Chief Luo and the others. Bufang did not take it seriously after sending Shin Gongpao away with one punch. The sound of an engine filled the air as the armored vehicle drove away from the place and headed for the secret base outside Jiangdong City. That was where the Jiangdong branch of the state's supernatural bureau was located. In the sky, Shin Gongpao was naked, blood dripping from the corner of his mouth. He poured out pills from a jade bottle and stuffed them into his mouth. He might not be good at anything else, but his life-saving skills were top-notch. He would flee as soon as he sensed something was wrong. However, he still suffered a small loss. He was almost killed by the young man's punch. That's terrifying. That young man is definitely an immortal king. I can't believe there's an immortal king on the ancestral planet. I have to tell the sect leader immediately. No wonder he could shatter the sect leader's immortal demise sword clone. After taking the immortal pill, Shin Gongpao's face was ruddy and glowing. He squeezed his legs, and the Black Panther immediately carried him toward the immortal island of Penglai. At the State Supernatural Bureau's base in Jiangdong, beep, 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 the basement was bustling with activity. Men in uniform were running to the trot. Bufang came to the main control room, where dozens of operators were fiddling with computers. Bufang raised his head and looked at the huge light screen in front of him. On the light screen was a model of the Earth. The Earth's appearance had changed greatly, and it was covered with red dots. This is the main control room of the State Supernatural Bureau. We exchange information with the headquarters. You can definitely find what you want. Chief Luo looked proudly at Bufang. The equipment of Hua's State Supernatural Bureau was also one of the most advanced in the world. Bufang raised his eyebrows slightly. He did not understand what Chief Luo meant. All right, help me find a woman. Bufang thought for a moment and said. Chief Luo was taken aback. He did not expect Bufang to look for a woman first instead of a divine artifact. How could the equipment of the State's Supernatural Bureau be used to find a woman? Chief Luo looked embarrassed. A woman in a long black dress. She's very beautiful, Bufang said after thinking for a moment. Chief Luo's face darkened even more. There are so many women like this in the world. How is he going to find one? Are there any other characteristics? Chief Luo asked cautiously. Other characteristics? Bufang was taken aback. The corner of his mouth twitched slightly. Yes. What characteristics? Chief Luo asked curiously. That woman. She has a bad temper and is very strong. She plays with snakes when she's angry and can destroy a country when she's angry. Bufang tilted his head, thought for a moment, and said indifferently, Chapter 16:21. The Immortal Island of Penglai. At this moment, Penglai Island seemed to have turned into a real fairyland. Immortal energy lingered and spread, enveloping the entire island. The misty white mist lingered over the sea like clouds in the sky, looking extremely ethereal. The vegetation on the island seemed to be stimulated by the immortal energy. It grew faster and grew into towering trees with dense branches. A Tao altar sat in the center of the island, dotted with many immortal palaces. Shun Gongbao was naked, and his heart was still filled with horror. Riding on a black panther, he clamped his legs on it and let it gallop forward at high speed. When the panther rushed into the island, many Penglai disciples were stunned when they saw him naked. It turns out that there are immortals with hardcore tastes. Many Qi refinement warrior disciples were mumbling. Shen Gongbao, of course, ignored them. At this moment, he only wanted to see the person he really wanted to see. Buzz. Along the way, many immortals greeted him, but he ignored them all. It was an immortal palace surrounded by immortal energy. A Taoist with a seven-colored light disc flashing behind him was sitting cross-legged in the center of the palace, giving a sermon. His magnificent voice lingered in the air, making the whole group of immortal palaces tremble with him. Praying mats were placed all around the Taoist. On the praying mats, experts were sitting cross-legged. Their postures were all different, but they were all quietly listening to the Taoist preach. Patriarch Penglai and the other natives of Penglai Island were even more fascinated by the sermon. Behind Patriarch Penglai was Yuge, dressed in a green robe. He scratched his ears and cheeks, feeling a little irritated. He didn't know why, but he couldn't listen to the Taoist cultivation method at all. This was in sharp contrast to the people around him who were fascinated by the sermon. As he listened to the sermon, he couldn't help but think of the egg-fried rice cooked by Buffon. The food disturbed his mind, making it impossible for him to listen to the almighty expert's voice of the great path. The lofty Taoist was an almighty expert, an existence that even patriarchs feared. Yuge could clearly sense the terrible aura emanating from the Taoist. Suddenly, the Taoist's voice stopped abruptly. He opened his eyes, which were filled with peace. For swords floated behind him. The swords were green, red, white, and black. Every single one of them contained a shocking might. Just by sensing it, one would feel as if they were about to fall into the sword chi. The immortal palace became noisy. Everyone opened their eyes and looked outside the immortal palace. There, a naked figure riding a black panther staggered over. Sect Master. The screams reverberated in the hall. Shun Gongbao landed on the ground and covered his naked body with his clothes. He looked at the Taoist in front of him and began to cry. He told them about his encounter with Buffon. Everyone in the immortal palace was furious when they heard this. Preposterous! The demons are causing trouble and dare to kill us immortals and gods. The Sect Master's sword clone represents the Sect Master. This demon is too audacious. He deserves to die, killing the celestial immortal, shattering the celestial sword. Does this demon want to be our enemy? Many immortals in the immortal palace were furious. Many heaven immortals and even immortal kings were glaring. However, after a brief uproar, everyone turned to look at the Taoist. The Taoist was as calm as water. His state of mind made many immortals feel ashamed of their inferiority. It doesn't matter. He's just an evil man. However, the divine artifact he obtained is very important, and we can't ignore it. For heavenly kings, come out and take the evil man's head. The Taoist said lightly. Below the immortal palace, for fierce-eyed divine generals in armor stepped out. They came in different shapes and sizes, but all of them looked fierce. Rest assured, Sect Master, anyone who offends us and insults immortals will not escape our pursuit. Their auras were incomparably powerful and full of energy. When they spoke in the immortal palace, the void seemed to explode. The Taoist nodded. Then, the four heavenly kings stepped on immortal clouds and flew away. Down below, Yuge was already terrified. Oh no, The four heavenly kings were peak heaven immortals. Each of them was only one step away from becoming an immortal king. If the four of them joined forces, they could kill an immortal king. Senior is in trouble. Yuga felt uneasy. He glanced at Patriarch Punglai, who was still immersed in the sound of the great path. Then, he flinched and left the immortal palace. In the immortal palace, the Taoist's eyes were indifferent. The four great divine artifacts have appeared on the ancestral planet. This is a rare opportunity, and we must seize it. The Taoist's eyes widened slightly, and there seemed to be a sharp will surging in them. In addition to the immortal island of Punglai, many immortals and blessed lands in Hua had also arrived. These immortals would eventually collide with each other. Beep, beep, beep. Chief Luo, wearing a pair of black-rimmed glasses, gave this burly man a somewhat intellectual look. Senior, according to your description, we've begun to search the world, and now we've locked on to 4 areas. All 4 areas have had, or are in the middle of a great war. We've sent fighter jets to investigate, and we'll have news soon. Chief Luo said to Bufang, who was standing next to him. Bufang nodded, leaned back in his chair, and watched quietly. Before long, images appeared on the huge screen. Buzz, the first scene was that of a barren land. It was a barren land, but the barren land seemed to have been stripped of a layer. The sand and stones on the ground had all melted. Where's this? Bufang asked. This is a desert in Xinjiang, Chief Luo said. The image continued to change. It was now a vast lake. On the surface of the lake, waves surged violently. On the surface of the lake, there was a huge fish with its white belly turned upside down as it floated. And where is this? Bufang continued to ask. This is a great lake in Siberia. Chief Luo's face grew more and more unsightly. Why were the images transmitted back so horrifying? Suddenly, the image changed again. Bufang, who had been sitting in his chair, suddenly had a sharp look in his eyes. The image showed the top of a snowy mountain where snow and wind howled. There was a graceful figure standing at the top of the mountain. Beside the graceful figure was a stove, and the graceful woman's hand was placed on the stove. Zoom in, Bufang said. Chief Luo's heart trembled. Had he found her? The image on the fighter plane zoomed in and became clearer. Reflected on the screen was a stunning face. Her skin was delicate, her red lips glowed, and her long eyelashes fluttered. It was an enchanting sight. So beautiful. Everyone in the control room couldn't help exclaiming. I'm not asking you to look at her. Look at that stove. Bufang's voice rang out again, interrupting Chief Luo's reverie. Chief Luo fumbled with the controls. Suddenly, the image became clear. It was a white stove, and there seemed to be a divine light swirling over it. That's one of the divine artifacts in the 4 spiritual energy sealing points on Earth. A divine stove, Chief Luo exclaimed. Suddenly Yu, with her hand on the stove, seemed to have sensed the spy plane. She raised her emotionless eyes and fixed them on the fighter plane. Everyone felt suffocated. With a bang, the fighter plane exploded soundlessly, and the image was completely cut off. Chief Luo's forehead was beaded with sweat. The moment he met the woman's eyes, he thought he was going to die. It was too terrifying. Where's that place? Bufang rose from his chair, ready to move. That's the roof of the world. The corner of Chief Luo's mouth twitched. Bufang glanced at Chief Luo. The roof of the world? That's the tallest mountain in the world? How did you get there? And why's the stove next to you? More importantly, Bufang caught a glimpse of you being surrounded by a dense crowd of people. Those people seem to be trying to surround you. Are you kidding me? Surround you? You have obtained the legacy of the previous curse goddess, and you're no weaker than Bufang. How could those people be a match for you? Unless you're also restricted by something on Earth. That was possible. Bufang raised his head as if to look through the sky. Bufang had a feeling that someone was watching everything from high above. Get ready, let's go. We're leaving, Bufang said. Chief Luo's face darkened a little. That's the roof of the world. Bufang ignored them. He walked out of base. Outside, Bufang glanced at the sky. With a thought, he began to sense the location of the white tiger heaven stove. He stamped his foot down. A loud boom rang out. Bu Fong shot into the sky like a cannonball, heading toward the roof of the world. After Bu Fong left, the people from a Special Abilities Bureau hurriedly came out and prepared all kinds of equipment. Helicopters took off, and fighter planes roared out, following Bu Fong. Chief Luo had a feeling that something big was about to happen. There might even be a clash between the gods of various countries. It should be noted how fierce the competition for the divine artifact was this time. Even the mysterious Western Church had taken action. Not long after Bu Fong and the others left, auspicious clouds rolled in from the sky. Thunderclaps seemed to echo in the clouds, for figures could be vaguely seen in them. One was holding a pipa, one was holding a great green sword, one was holding a violet gold dragon fox ferret, and the last one was holding a rainbow-colored umbrella. As soon as the four appeared, heaven and earth seemed to dim a little. That evil man's aura has stopped here. It's gone, said Mo Lis Ho, who was holding the flower fox ferret with narrowed eyes. The flower fox ferret twitched its nose as if it was sniffing something, then pointed in a direction. It doesn't matter. We will certainly offer the sect leader's head, Mo Lihai said indifferently, holding the pipa. The other two also laughed out loud. They were the four heavenly kings of the primitive universe, the celestial court. It would be easy for them to deal with an evil man. Their strength was at the peak of heaven immortal realm. A moment later, the four of them stepped on auspicious clouds, clad in thunderbolts, and sped in the direction Bu Fong had left. It was as if a great, invisible storm was sweeping across the sky. Bu Fong was like a cannonball, shooting across the sky with a terrible sonic boom. Bu Fong's speed was too fast. In just a moment, the towering snow mountain appeared in front of him. Bu Fong also sensed her aura in the blink of an eye. Of course, in addition to Yu's aura, there were all kinds of auras. Bu Fong narrowed his eyes, a cold gleam flashing in them. Chapter 1622. The Himalayas. It was called the roof of the world. The highest peak, Mount Everest, towered into the clouds, and one couldn't see the sky. Ordinary people couldn't go up there. The clouds were surging. At the peak of Mount Everest, the wind and snow blew. The howling wind brought a cold air. However, at this moment, there was a graceful figure standing on the peak of the mountain. This figure wore a long black dress, which seemed to be flowing. When it brushed against her skin, it gave her a soft feeling. Her black hair fluttered, brushing against her cheeks. Her beautiful face was partly hidden and partly hidden. You stood on the peak. Her eyes were emotionless as she indifferently scanned the area. She stood on the peak of the mountain, looking down at all the mountains. Beside her, there was a white stove. The stove was overflowing with colorful lights and seemed to be emitting a warm aura, causing the ice and snow to slowly melt when they came into contact with it. You tilted her head, glancing at the white tiger heaven stove. You naturally recognized the stove. After all, it belonged to Bu Fong. She had seen Bu Fong use it. This was also the reason why she took action and snatched the white tiger heaven stove from so many experts. Of course, to you, taking the stove was nothing. Even if the cursed power in her body was completely suppressed, her body was extremely tough. The body of a half-step heavenly god was enough to crush everything in the world. Swish! The wind and snow blew. Large snowflakes floated in the sky. Looking up, all she could see was a vast expanse of white. However, in the vast expanse of white snow, then figures appeared one after another. They were the gods from various countries. The Himalayas was the roof of the world, which separated Huan Nation and many other countries. This time, the white tiger heaven stove was opened on a peak in the Himalayas. The spiritual energy storm had attracted the attention of many gods. These deities were the ones who crawled out of the black hole after the spiritual energy seal was broken. Ring, ring. You rolled her eyes, looking into the distance. There, in the wind and snow, many figures were coming over, stepping on the white snow. They were monks dressed in red robes with yellow kasayas on their shoulders. They wore huge half-moon-shaped hats on their heads, and their styles were completely different. These people came through the wind and snow, and there were people holding huge cylindrical Buddhist umbrellas for them. The sound of Buddha lingered in the air, and the sound of Zen echoed. This was a powerful force. You turned her head to the side again, her eyes slightly cold. Over there was a naked, dark-skinned figure with oil paint on his face and gold and silver jewelry hanging on his neck, who was observing the scene. The auras of these people were extremely strong. Their spiritual energy was soaring into the sky and was incomparably terrifying. There was also a figure riding a bear and a figure with arms growing out of his back. Of course, apart from these foreign deities, there were also Hua immortals standing there. A team of fairies was also standing on a mountain peak far away, watching you from afar. None of these god spirit experts were in a hurry to attack. They were all confronting each other. After all, everyone wanted the stove, but no one wanted to be the target of everyone. Of course, there was another reason. The woman in the black dress was terrifyingly strong. Although she had no magic power, her fleshly body was extremely strong. Many people had no idea how strong she was. Amitabha, benefactor, hand over the stove and leave the Holy Land, and you will not die. An old lama, clad in a vermilion robe and a yellow kasaya on his shoulders, stared at you and said, in his hands, there were golden rings all over his arms. Get lost. Nethery stood on the summit of Mount Everest. No matter how the wind blew, she was indifferent. She only said one word in response to the old lama's words with an expressionless face. The expressions of all the people present changed. This woman is too strong. Many foreign deities narrowed their eyes as gloating expressions appeared on their faces. The gods from India, on the other hand, looked at her coldly. The 4 divine artifacts were scattered all over Earth. Now that the world had undergone a great change, they must be holding great secrets. If they could get their hands on them, they might have a chance to glimpse the supreme Tao. Therefore, they would not give up on the stove. Benefactor, you're being stubborn. Only by joining the Buddhist League will you have a good end. The old lama sighed with a compassionate sigh. The next moment, he nodded at the few lamas on either side of him. The lamas lifted their kasayas, looked at you, and walked out with small steps. Then they kicked the ground and soared into the sky. Boom, boom, boom. Spiritual energy gushed out and turned into beams of light, which formed a terrifying energy net. They formed a huge net, which then flew toward Nethery, who was at the peak of the mountain. You placed her hand on the stove. To him, the white tiger heaven stove was not very convenient to use. The main reason was that this stove was too heavy. Even with Yu's fleshly body, she could barely lift it. Nethery slightly furrowed her brows, and her mind flickered. Suddenly, a dark green light flashed in her eyes. On his body, there was an indistinct jade-green snake shadow. However, very quickly, an unparalleled pressure enveloped her body. The pressure seemed to come from the depths of the universe. Yu was expressionless. As expected, the power of the curse in her body was still being suppressed. The pressure made you very uncomfortable. Of course, you thought that she could break free with all her strength. However, if she did that, she would definitely cause a backlash from this world. This planet was not ordinary. Moreover, you had also learned about the 4 divine artifacts. In her opinion, they were Bu Fong's cooking utensils. This planet must have something to do with the secret in Bu Fong's body. This was also the reason why Nethery had snatched this stove from the hands of so many experts. Several lamas rushed up, chanting Sanskrit. They sent a huge energy net toward you. These lamas did not dare to approach you because they knew that her fleshly body was too terrifying. Her fists were like the fiends, and a light touch was enough to make their bodies explode. Therefore, they planned to put some distance between them and the woman with their energy. The lamas were all at the level of Earth immortals. The energy barrier that they created could suppress the woman. Nethery furrowed her brows. She was annoyed that these lamas could not break the energy net with their fists. She was annoyed that she could not break the energy net with her fists. Boom! All of a sudden, you stomp her foot on the mountain. Her crystal-clear foot landed on the top of the mountain, causing it to explode. Then, she threw a punch. At this moment, the small punch seemed to have become the focus of heaven and earth. Bam! The punch collided with the energy net, and the impact seemed to tear it apart in an instant. It was very powerful and terrifying. The expressions of the surrounding experts flickered. All of a sudden, all the experts made their moves. Thousands of rays of light burst out from the back of the Indian god, and he threw out thousands of palms. Countless palm prints covered the sky and flew toward you. The giant bear roared, opened its mouth, and shot out energy bombs. Snow wolves howled, and a storm swept across the sky. The old llama opened his eyes and waved his hand. The golden rings in his hand immediately shot out toward you. The female immortals standing on the distant peaks also raised their fingers. Then, the spinning petals became extremely sharp, turning into sharp knives that tore through the sky and shot toward you. At this moment, everyone reached a consensus. The white tiger heaven stove was the only one among the 4 divine artifacts that could still be fought for. The Western Church had taken away the black wok. The god of the pyramid had occupied a kitchen knife. The mysterious Chi cultivator of Hua had obtained a chef's robe. Now all that was left was the white tiger heaven stove. The gods of India and many other countries would never give it up. Boom, boom. A dense amount of energy smashed down from the sky. You looked up, her black hair fluttering in the wind. Her eyes were cold. She raised her fist. She fought against the crowd with one punch. She could not believe that her punch had actually blocked so many energy attacks. It should be noted that there were many heaven immortals present. The Indian gods, the old llama, and the female immortals standing on the peak of the mountain were all heaven immortals. Their attacks only caused the sky to shatter. Crack! Crack! The ground under you's feet was suddenly covered with cracks, as if it was about to split open. A rumbling sound rang out, and the mountain crumbled. The rustling snow turned into a huge avalanche, surging down from the peak of the mountain and surging in all directions. Waves of snow rumbled as if the mountain was collapsing and the earth was cracking. In Tibet, the people at the foot of the Himalayas fell to their knees in fear, rubbing their hands and kowtowing to the sky. The gods were fighting on the divine mountain. The battle between the gods made them anxious. Yu's face was cold. She grabbed the white tiger heaven stove with one hand and blocked the attacks of many experts with the other. The snow under her feet seemed to turn into a huge vortex, rumbling and rumbling nonstop. Many people were shocked by this scene. Where did this woman come from? How could her fleshly body be so ridiculously strong? Benefactor, take a step back. This stove is useless to you. Why don't you give it to the Buddha and bestow upon us fortune? The old llama said. Every time his golden ring smashed down, it would make Nethery's body rumble unceasingly. You glared at the old llama. Shut up. What do you know? I can exchange this stove for food. Can your fortune be eaten? You said. The old llama's eyes turned cold. You're spouting nonsense and stubbornly refusing to come to your senses. You're just a mere mortal. How can you contend with the gods? The old llama let out a long cry, and then a golden light spread from his palm. He rubbed his palm, and then a huge golden staff fell from the sky. The staff was covered with golden rings. A clanging sound rang out. The staff's aura towered into the sky, filled with a sacred aura. This is the divine artifact of the Buddha. Use it to suppress this evil woman, the old llama said coldly. Many experts in the surroundings sucked in their breaths. Even the Indian gods felt their hearts palpitate. The few female immortals fell silent. There seemed to be a Buddha's light shining on the staff. Rumble. It fell from the sky and went straight toward you. It was the old llama's magic artifact, the treasure used by Lord Buddha. It had the power to suppress the heavens. The old llama was very confident that the stove was a magic artifact given by Lord Buddha to deal with the evil woman. By using this magic artifact, he had shown his belief that he must get the stove. It made the people in the surroundings very afraid. The ground under Yu's feet caved in. Avalanches kept raging on the mountain, and a layer of the peak was shaved off. Heavy snow swirled around her body. Yu sank deep into the whirlpool of snow, as if she was about to be completely devoured. However, Yu's eyes were still filled with determination. Suddenly, that gave Yu pause. She turned her head and looked at the boundless sky. There, a whistling sound rang out. Down below, a god of a foreign race riding a huge bear roared, and the huge bear soared into the sky. "Who are you? How can you be so unruly?" The divinity roared. Light surged. The four llamas put their palms together and soared into the sky as well, trying to fend off the figure who had come to interfere instinctively. That was right. In the distant horizon, a dark figure was approaching at high speed. It was not walking in the air, nor was it stepping on clouds. Instead, it was shooting toward them like a cannonball. The whistling sound and the sonic boom made everyone's expressions flicker. The giant bear slapped its chest and roared. Nethery looked at the figure that was rushing towards her, and the corners of her mouth twitched slightly. Boom! In the sky, standing on the giant bear's shoulder, the divine spirit collided with the man who was charging at them. Only light shone in the sky. Then, the alien god was blown apart and turned into a mist of blood. The giant bear was thrown to the ground, its body covered in snow. The four llamas tried to block it, but in an instant they were all sent flying backward, coughing up blood. Half of their bodies were blown to pieces by the blast. The terrible aura almost suffocated everyone. Bam! In an instant, the figure fell to the ground. He landed beside you. At this moment, the swirling blizzard seemed to stop. The figure slowly raised his head, revealing an expressionless face. Chapter 16:23. Tap, tap, tap. The helicopter struggled to ascend. In front of it, Bufong could no longer be seen. The fighter plane roared and sped away, leaving the helicopter far behind. In the fighter plane, Chief Luo and Xiao Ai's eyes widened. They watched as Bufong fell like a cannonball and landed on the top of the world that towered into the clouds. They all sucked in a cold breath. The scene on the top of the world was so terrifying that it made their hair stand on end. What was that? It was a grizzly bear the size of a mountain. On the back of the grizzly bear, there was a god of a foreign land, shining with divine light. However, the moment Bufong landed, the foreign god was blown to pieces. The gray bear was beaten to the ground. It didn't even have a chance to scream before it was blown to pieces. What kind of mighty power was that? Senior is so domineering. Xiao Ai clenched her fists, her eyes shining. The scene in front of her was so beautiful. A black-haired woman in a black dress was besieged by many evil forces, facing countless disasters. Just as it was feeling helpless and hesitant, Bufong descended from the sky like a heaven god stepping on colorful auspicious clouds and killed an evil god. His domineering aura could make all the women in the world fall for him. At this thought, Xiao Ai's eyes widened, and she took out a camera. "What are you doing?" Chief Luo looked at Xiao Ai, puzzled. "I want to record everything about Senior. From now on, I'm his die-hard fan." Xiao Ai said, raising her chin. Chief Luo rolled his eyes and ignored Xiao Ai. The world had changed greatly, and all kinds of gods had been born. The world had long known that there were extraordinary people with great power in the world. There was no harm in recording all this. It could even set off a national cultivation craze. That was not bad. Bufong landed. He raised his head and looked around. The avalanche seemed to have stopped the moment Bufong landed. The atmosphere froze for a moment. You looked at the familiar figure in front of her, and the corners of her mouth curled up slightly. Bufong finally came. As expected, guarding the White Tiger Heaven stove was not wrong. Bufong would eventually come looking for this stove. You pursed her lips. The surrounding snow froze in the air, unable to fall, as if it was being held up by an invisible hand. "Who is this?" The old llama widened his eyes, and a hint of doubt flashed across them. In the distance, The celestial maidens hovering in the air were also puzzled. Many of the foreign gods narrowed their eyes. They had been waiting for an opportunity, but they hadn't expected that someone would appear out of nowhere. Could they be that woman's reinforcements? Save someone? Today, this stove belongs to our Zen sect. It's useless no matter who comes. The old lama said coldly. Bang! The originally stagnant snowstorm seemed to have once again swept up violently. The great avalanche came roaring down again, wanting to swallow Bufong in an instant. Bang! 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 Snow fell on the rocks, cracking them. Countless snowflakes rolled down, piling up snow as they swept toward you and Bufong. Bufong raised his head. His face was expressionless as he glanced at the snow around him. Then, he simply ignored the terrible avalanche. Instead, he looked at you. You've been waiting for a long time, right? Bufong asked. You nodded. Then, she raised her hand and patted the white tiger heaven stove. The white tiger heaven stove instantly flew toward Bufong. Return it to its rightful owner. You said. She didn't hide her words, so the people around her heard them. Return it to its rightful owner? What a joke. It belongs to me. The old lama glared, his eyes bursting with light. Ting-a-ling, the golden staff in the sky spun and smashed down vertically. Its original target was you, but this time, it changed its target to the white tiger heaven stove. Bang! A loud noise rang out. The staff ruthlessly smashed the white tiger heaven stove. The white tiger heaven stove, which had been flying away, was smashed into the peak of the mountain. At this moment, the whole mountain shook violently. The avalanche rolled down. In an instant, the white tiger heaven stove and the staff were swallowed. The two divine tools were instantly submerged under the white snow. Nethery leaped into the air, treading on the snow that was falling rapidly. Her long hair fluttered in the wind, and her long dress fluttered as she looked at Bufong. The avalanche fell with a rumble. In an instant, Bufong was completely covered by the snow, and there was no more news of him. Oh, everyone was taken aback. They didn't expect things to develop like this in the fighter jet in the sky. Chief Luo and Xiao AI were also stunned. Senior was swallowed by the avalanche. The old lama's face was cold, his long beard and eyebrows fluttering. Suddenly, his pupils constricted. In the pure white snow, a silver light suddenly appeared. It was a wisp of flame. The flame appeared. Rumble, the snow melted and evaporated at a speed visible to the naked eye. Sizzle, white steam rose up from the ground. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air as they looked at the center. There, the young man just now was standing there. Silver flames swirled around the young man's body like silver lotus flowers. Every time they spun, the white snow would evaporate. The dense steam made the young man look like a banished immortal. Stop pretending to be mysterious. Kill him. The old lama was full of hostility. With Bufong's body as the center, the white snow instantly evaporated, revealing the mountain peak. The exposed rocks were also exposed to everyone's sight. Hiss, with just a thought, he could evaporate the snow on the roof of the world. What kind of technique was this? The old lama took action himself. He soared into the sky, and the golden rings kept gathering in his hand, stacking on top of each other. Then, he thrust out his palm. The rings kept colliding with each other, producing a clanging sound. A golden palm suddenly appeared in the sky. It was as if the Buddha of the ninth heaven had slapped down from the heavens. Its power was terrifying. The celestial maidens all wore shocked expressions. What a powerful palm! It's comparable to the strike of a heaven immortal, as expected of someone from the Zen school. He's very strong. The Queen Mother was right when she told us to be careful of someone from the Zen school. The fairy maidens murmured. Bufong raised his head and looked at the palm with an expressionless face. The strike of a heaven immortal? The corner of Bufong's mouth twitched disdainfully. Facing the palm with the golden rings, Bufong raised his Taotai arm, shook it, and threw out a punch. Bam! The sound was like the heavens falling and the earth rending. Without any fancy moves, his fist collided with the old lama's palm. Boom! The evenly matched fight that everyone had expected did not happen. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air in disbelief. The scene in front of them had completely exceeded their expectations. Slash! The young man was unharmed. He had taken the old llama's punch head-on, and his feet did not even waver. His movements were the same as before. However, the old llama's expression changed dramatically in a flash. His face turned as pale as a sheet of paper. Meanwhile, the huge palm was crumbling inch by inch, and the spiritual energy in his body seemed to have dried up. He was knocked flying backward by Bu Fong's punch, and the golden rings around him were all broken. Rumble, crack, crack. The sound of bones breaking rang out. The old llama fell hard to the ground, his feet sinking deep into the ground. From a distance, it looked as if he was kneeling on the ground. The foreign gods were stunned. The fairies were stunned. The Dalai Lama experts were also completely stunned. In the fighter jet, Chief Luo and the others sucked in cold breaths as well. He had been blown to pieces with one punch. The venerable Lama of the Zen school was blown to pieces by Bu Fong with one punch. Wasn't he being unreasonable? Venerable One, the Dalai Lama experts immediately roared. One by one, they rushed out. His aura towered into the sky, piling up one by one. The densely packed Lamas piled on top of each other and turned into a huge Zen Buddha. Then, the Buddha pointed a finger at Bu Fong. The Dalai Lama, who had turned into Buddhas, also pointed out their fingers. It was a Zen school array with infinite power. At this moment, they had no choice but to use it. A young Lama ran to the old Lama and tried to pull him up from the ground. However, the old Lama's head was bowed, and he felt his aura becoming weak. Cough! Let's go, the old Lama said weakly, glancing at the young Lama. The pride in his eyes was shattered, and all that was left was fear. That was right. Bu Fong had destroyed his secret art with one punch. That was a secret art of the Zen school. It's all right, Venerable One. Senior brothers will definitely be able to subdue this evil man, the young Lama said excitedly. However, as soon as he finished speaking, a loud noise rang out. Thousands of screams rang out. Dense streams of blood swept across the heavens. All the Dalai Lamas rushed forward. Their arms, which had stretched out a finger, exploded. Blood splattered on the young Lama's face. He was dumbstruck. Are you bullying my people? Just now, Bu Fong had only punched once. After recovering some of his strength, Bu Fong looked extremely domineering. He glanced indifferently at the Lama experts who had been smashed to pieces by his punch. He raised his hand. A loud explosion rang out. In the distance, the white tiger heaven stove flew out of a pile of snow that had not melted. On top of the stove, there was a monk's staff. It was a divine artifact of the Zen school. Bu Fong single-handedly grabbed the white tiger heaven stove and glanced at the staff. The next moment, he grabbed the staff. Under the control of Bu Fong's divine sense, a silver fire lotus slowly floated out. It wrapped around the staff. Gradually, the golden staff quietly melted. Its supreme power was about to burst out, but it was suppressed by Bu Fong and could not erupt. The old Lama, whose legs had sunk deep into the ground, widened his eyes and stared fixedly at Bu Fong and the melted staff. You. The old Lama pointed at Bu Fong and spat out a mouthful of blood. He fell to the ground and lost all signs of life. The disheveled Dalai Lama's eyes immediately became lifeless. So powerful, the fairies clicked their tongues. He was so violent and domineering that he had scared a Zen venerable to death. You landed. Bu Fong waved his hand. The melted staff spilled on the ground, giving off a high temperature and sizzling sound. Bu Fong grabbed the white tiger heaven stove and frowned. Sure enough, the artifact spirit of the stove was not here. It seemed like it had transformed and left like the vermilion bird. Do you know where the egg in front of the stove went? Bu Fong asked. He was taken aback. She shook her head. I don't know. I killed a monk with one punch and snatched this stove. You said expressionlessly. Bu Fong, I'm hungry. Bu Fong felt a headache coming on. Where did that arrogant white tiger go? Fine. I'll cook something for you after I solve the problem. Buffon glanced at you and said. Buzz, the fighter plane hovered in the air. Chief Luo sucked in a breath of cold air. Senior is too powerful. Senior is too invincible. All of a sudden, the pilot of the fighter plane let out a cry of terror. Chief Luo was stunned. He turned to look. He saw a ferocious face appear outside the window of the fighter plane. It was a divine general holding a pipa. Wah! The burly man opened his mouth and let out a roar. Evil man, where do you think you're going? Leave behind your head obediently. Boom! His voice rang out, causing a deafening rumble. The entire Himalayas shook at this moment. 4 dazzling beams of light and 4 auspicious clouds floated in the sky. Mo Lihai, Mo Liqing, Mo Lihong, and Mo Liso stood in the 4 corners of the sky. Shocking immortal energy surged between heaven and earth. Their surging killing intent pressed toward Buffon. The wind and snow fell silent. Chapter 1624. What is that? On the fighter plane, Chief Luo's forehead was covered in cold sweat. He had never expected that someone would suddenly appear outside the fighter jet. He looked fierce and wore armor. An immortal energy lingered around him. This appearance was very familiar. Chief Luo was very knowledgeable, and he immediately knew who the 4 people in front of him were. 4 heavenly kings, the legendary divine general of the heavenly court. Chief Luo gasped. Xiao Ai was also dumbstruck, unable to care about anything else. 4 heavenly kings? Do they really exist? Xiao Ai asked. The 4 great godly generals. Seems like their target is Senior. Senior is in danger. Chief Luo said with a long sigh. The 4 heavenly kings were not like Shen Gongbao. They were the real heavenly guardian gods of war. Every one of them was extremely powerful. According to the legends, the 4 heavenly kings were extremely powerful. The appearance of such an existence was enough to intimidate everyone. At the peak of the Himalayas, Buffon raised his head to look at the 4 existences in the sky. The 4 existences hovered in 4 different directions in the sky, each with a different posture. Their expressions were fierce, and their eyes were wide open, as if they wanted to kill Buffon with their gazes. One was holding a pipa, one was holding a long sword, one was carrying a flower fox ferret, and one was holding a pearl umbrella. The entire mountain peak seemed to be locked down by a terrifying aura. The fairies gasped. It's the 4 heavenly kings, the 4 invincible existences in the chaotic universe. Every one of them is a peak heaven immortal, and the 4 of them can kill an immortal king if they join forces. As deities of Kunlun, the fairies naturally knew about the 4 heavenly kings. The Queen Mother had said that many champions from the primordial universe had returned to the homeworld. It seems that it was true. The celestial maidens looked at each other and saw the astonishment in each other's eyes. The status of these female immortals was not as high as the 4 heavenly kings. After all, they were sent by the Queen Mother of the West to search for divine artifacts. Although the ancestral star was recovering, the true gods and immortals still did not dare to make a move. There seemed to be an invisible limit. That was why these little gods and immortals had the opportunity to make a move. The 4 heavenly kings were enough to represent the current top-notch combat power. The surrounding foreign gods also narrowed their eyes. One of the gods of India was trembling. The birth of a divine artifact actually caused such a dispute. Oh, great God, it's time for you to act. This was a small god, and everyone paid attention to him. He knelt on the ground in a corner, grabbed a dagger from his waist, and cut his palm with it. Buffon, and you also raised their heads and looked at the 4 heavenly kings. The flustered llamas roared angrily. They hoped that the 4 heavenly kings could avenge their venerable. The 4 heavenly kings had noble statuses. When they saw the Kunlun female immortals, they nodded at them. The female immortals hurriedly nodded. Then, the 4 heavenly kings looked at each other and prepared to attack. The sect master had ordered them to bring back the demon's head, so they naturally had to do it well. Do it. Mo Lehigh grabbed his pipa and glanced at his three brothers. Then, with his big belly and immortal energy, he stepped forward. He took a step forward and his figure began to swell, growing to a height of 10,000 feet. It was as if he was a god who ruled over everything. Holding the pipa in his hand, he glared at Bu Fong with wide eyes. "Give me your life, demon!" Mo Lehigh roared, and the whole Himalayas exploded. Bu Fong looked up at Mo Lehigh, his face expressionless. In front of the 100,000 feet tall Mo Lehigh, he was as small as an ant. You tilted her head, narrowed her eyes, and rubbed her fists. She leaned forward slightly, as if she was going to attack. "Don't worry, I'll do it." Bu Fong glanced at you and stopped her. "Oh," Nethery sighed, feeling a little regretful. The corner of Bu Fong's mouth twitched. What does that regretful expression mean? However, Bu Fong didn't need you to attack. He was going to end the battle quickly. After all, he was in a hurry to find the white tiger. That arrogant white tiger has a bad temper. Bu Fong had a feeling that this fellow would definitely cause a lot of trouble. Clang, clang, clang. Mo Lehigh straightened his back and took a step forward. His eyes burst with divine light as he stared straight at Bu Fong. His fingers plucked the pipa. A five-colored sound wave spread from the pipa, enveloping Bu Fong. The sound of the pipa lingered in the air. The surrounding snow-capped mountains immediately began to tremble soundlessly. The snow was trembling endlessly as if it was being stirred. As it trembled, the snow exploded. Boom! Boom! Terrible rumbles kept erupting from the surrounding snow mountains. Pure white snow sprinkled down from the sky. "Demon, die!" Mo Lehigh bellowed. The remaining three heavenly kings looked on with faint smiles. They were all very confident. They couldn't sense Bu Fong's aura. Since he could scare Shun Gongbao away, he might be a heaven immortal expert. However, they were not afraid. Mo Lehigh would definitely succeed. The three heavenly kings also transformed into bodies tens of thousands of feet tall, each holding a divine artifact and glaring down at Bu Fong. They were building momentum for Mo Lehigh. They wanted to make this demon kneel with their pressure. In fact, the four heavenly kings were famous in the primitive universe. They didn't even need to make a move to deal with demons. The sound wave spread toward Bu Fong. Bu Fong raised his eyebrows slightly. He felt as if his body was a little twisted. Bu Fong was quite surprised. The means of these mythical figures were indeed amazing. However, this sound wave had almost no effect on him. Bu Fong motioned you to take a step back. Then Bu Fong stomped his foot on the ground. Boom! The ground shook. Bu Fong soared into the sky like a beam of light. "How dare you resist?" Mo Lehigh sneered. He plucked the strings of his pipa and threw it in Bu Fong's direction. Go! Clang! Clang! The sound of the pipa was like pearls falling on a jade plate. The sound wave twisted everything as if to tear Bu Fong's body apart. However, the next moment, Mo Lehigh frowned. He found that when the sound wave swept past Bu Fong's body, it didn't affect Bu Fong at all. Bam! Bu Fong landed on the pipa as if he was hanging upside down. He looked at the pipa, which was made of a strange material. Playing the pipa? I can also... Bu Fong took a step forward. He landed on the strings of the pipa. Mo Lehigh flew into a rage. He kept plucking the strings with his fingers. He wanted to press Bu Fong to death on the pipa. However, when Bu Fong was on the strings, he spun and jumped. His eyes were closed. The strings he stepped on produced all kinds of notes, and a messy sound wave spread out. Mo Lehigh's face darkened. Bang! 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 Suddenly, the strings of the pipa broke one by one. Mo Lehigh flew into a rage. Bastard! Bu Fong, who was spinning and jumping, suddenly opened his eyes. His gaze was as sharp as a knife. He stomped hard on the pipa. A loud noise rang out. The pipa burst into pieces. The three heavenly kings could no longer watch the show. Their figures flashed as they charged toward Bu Fong. The four top heaven immortals attacked at the same time, causing the entire Himalayas to change color. This was more like a battle between immortals. The Kunlun fairies widened their eyes. Heaven immortals? Bufong gave a disdainful smile. A sort of azure light shot over. Bufong flicked his finger, shattering the sword. A pearl umbrella spun, shooting out beams of sharp divine light. The divine light hit Bufong, but it could do nothing to Bufong. This body, the four heavenly kings were shocked. Let me, Mo Liso shouted. A moment later, the flower fox ferret in his arms shot out. It expanded in the air and turned into a giant ferret that blotted out the sky. The ferret opened its mouth and roared. Its eyes were red, and its ferocity soared to the sky. This ferret is not bad. Bufong's eyes lit up. It seemed that the four heavenly kings were not completely useless. At least, they had raised a good ingredient. The ferret's back was patterned, and its fur was soft and smooth. It was a rare divine beast. The corner of Bufong's mouth rose. Then, he picked up Foxy, who was lying on his shoulder. Suddenly, he threw him at the flower fox ferret. "Little Hu, I'll leave this big ferret to you," Bufong said calmly. Little Hu wagged his tail, still a little confused when the big marten saw a little fox flying towards it. A look of disdain flashed across its eyes. It opened its mouth wide and let out a roar. A terrifying shockwave instantly rushed towards it as if it wanted to swallow the little fox whole. How could this ant-like spirit beast dare to act tough in front of a heavenly king spirit beast? Little Hu roared at the big ferret, its fur standing on its back. Little Hu was instantly enraged. Puff, puff, puff. Behind his buttocks, the originally hidden tails suddenly emerged one by one. 9 tails emerged. Boom! Little Hu's body suddenly grew bigger. His eyes were red. The appearance of the 9-tailed fox emerged, and Little Hu's blood was boiling. In an instant, Little Hu's fur turned blood red. That was the restless heaven god blood. A roar rang out. A paw patted the big ferret's head. The ferocious big ferret instantly became timid. Little Hu pressed in the air and kept patting it. Imoliso was dumbfounded. His flower fox ferret was suppressed by a 9-tailed fox. Bufong walked in the air step by step. He glanced at Little Hu, who looked like he was lecturing a child. Then, he turned to the 4 heavenly kings. "Don't break it. Keep it as an ingredient," Bufong said calmly. Little Hu's eyes brightened. Thinking about food, his saliva dripped from his mouth. Imoliso's lungs were about to explode. "Ayya, my flower fox ferret is a divine beast. How dare you use it as an ingredient?" Imoliso stomped his feet in anger. However, under his astonished gaze, Fong Chio's eyes were filled with shock. Little Hu returned with a half-dead flower fox ferret in his mouth, handing it to Bufong. Bufong grabbed the flower fox ferret. After studying it for a while, he put it into the system's storage space. It's a good ingredient. The 4 heavenly kings were furious. They had never been humiliated like this before. In the distance, the female immortals of Kunlun were also shocked. It seemed like even the 4 heavenly kings couldn't do anything to this evil man. "Let's make a move too. The Queen Mother needs a divine stove. We can't let her down." The female immortals nodded. Then, immortal energy exploded out. These female immortals flew toward Bufong as if they had ascended to the heavens. Flower baskets appeared in their hands without anyone noticing. They plucked beautiful flowers from baskets. Then, they sprinkled the flowers toward Bufong. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The flowers exploded in the air, turning into sharp petals. The petals spun, bringing with them a terrible cutting force. The 4 heavenly kings didn't refuse the female immortals' help. They returned to their normal size and stood in a corner of the sky, forming an array. Rumble. A seal emerged in the sky. It was the seal condensed of immortal energy, the heavenly king seal. Together with the female immortals' killing moves, the heavenly king seal flew toward Bufong. The foreign gods and immortals who were watching the show also attacked, each using their own means. Anu has diarrhea. A foreign deity muttered an incantation, and a huge face that blotted out the sky manifested behind him. At the same time, the face-slapping mouth spewed out thunderbolts, which smashed toward Buffon. All the gods and immortals used their own means. The blood of the Indian god, who was drawing circles on the side, flowed all over the ground as he drew an array. The next moment, the blood-colored array flickered. "Great god Garuda, come out!" The Indian god knelt down with a fanatical look on his face. All the gods and heaven immortals attacked. In a flash, the top of the Himalayas was enveloped by countless beams of divine light. In the fighter jet, Chief Luo and the others were already stunned. They were superhumans, but they had never seen such a magnificent battle. Can Senior resist it? Xiao Ai's mouth was trembling, and her hand holding the camera was shaking. Chief Luo, on the other hand, did not know what to say. You looked at Buffon, who had become the focus of everyone's attacks, and her eyes shone brightly. If even these minor immortals and gods could baffle Buffon, then he would no longer be Buffon. The corners of Yu's mouth curved upward slightly. Boom! Sure enough, a mighty aura rose from Buffon's body and towered into the sky. At this moment, Buffon did not hold back his aura at all. His aura continued to climb. In an instant, it reached an extremely frightening level. At this moment, Buffon seemed to have become the focus of heaven and earth. Buffon raised his hand. Divine power swirled around it, making it shine brilliantly. In the face of so many attacks, naturally, Buffon thrust out his palm. No matter how many tricks he has, I'll deal with them with one palm. The four heavenly kings glared at him. The celestial immortals shouted, and the foreign gods and immortals displayed their divine powers. If this scene were to happen, the world would be shocked. However, in the next moment, these strange phenomena, they were gently wiped away by a large hand made of energy. It was as if dust had been wiped away, and they vanished into thin air. One move, and he was killed in an instant. Chapter 16:25. One move. All of them were wiped out. They were wiped out in an instant. The surroundings were silent. The world was silent. There was only the sound of the wind and snow and the roar of fighter jets in the sky. In the fighter jets, everyone felt as if their necks were being strangled. Their bodies froze in the air, and they could not move at all. It was not that they did not want to move, but that they had forgotten to. What happened? Just now, what the F***CK happened? Where are all the gods, the four heavenly kings, and the immortals of Kunlun? Chief Luo was struck dumb. The walkie-talkie in his hand fell to the ground with a clatter. Xiao Ai's eyes widened, and her hand that was holding the camera turned red. Senior, you're really F***king. So cool. No one had expected that the result would be like this. Just when everyone was worried about Buffon, Buffon's expression suddenly changed. With just a light palm, he swept it across the sky as if he was holding a rag. The gods and the four heavenly kings were like stains that were wiped away by him with a wave of his hand. He was so powerful that it was suffocating. His movement was so fast that no one could react. Those are the four heavenly kings, the guardian divine generals of the heavenly court. Can't you give me some face and fight a little longer? The corner of Xiao Ai's mouth twitched. The next moment, she realized what was going on and looked at the camera in her hand. Retreat. Retreat. I need to analyze what happened just now. However, what she saw stunned her for a long time. The wind and snow kept blowing. The llamas who had fallen to the ground were dumbstruck. Looking at the clear blue sky, their minds seemed to be drifting with the wind. Is that human? You did not think much of it. With Buffon's strength, this was just normal. Great god Garuda, come out. Ahem, cough, cough. Halfway through his words, the Indian god's throat seemed to be clutched by a large hand. His eyes widened, and he began to cough. The main reason was that what happened just now was too F***king scary. God Garuda, you'd better go back, the Indian god wanted to cry. However, the array formation had already been activated, and he had lost so much blood, he couldn't bear to give up just like that. Therefore, the formation flickered. The array connected to the heavens and tore the sky apart. Bu Fong stood in the sky with his hands clasped behind his back, his eyes closed. That palm strike seemed casual, but in reality, it was the result of Bu Fong using his divine power. On Earth, the invisible suppression still existed. Although Bu Fong's strength had recovered a lot because of Vermilion Bird's return, it was still not enough. However, he was still unable to use the power of law. In the Chaos verse, there were 3,000 laws. But on Earth, Bu Fong could sense that the power system was different. Heaven immortals were equivalent to gods. To Bu Fong, killing gods with a single slap was nothing out of the ordinary. He opened his eyes. His eyes were very calm. He was, after all, a man who had seen great storms. When the soul demons invaded the chaotic universe, countless people died. His vision was too high, and it determined his behavior and style. Who? Open your mouth. Bu Fong breathed a sigh of relief. His face was as calm as still water. Oh! Suddenly, Bu Fong frowned slightly, turned his head, and looked in a direction in the distance. There, a blood-colored array was spinning, and there seemed to be a terrible aura in it. There seemed to be a deafening cry of a bird ringing out from within. As Bu Fong's gaze shifted, the Indian god, who had finished drawing the array, felt his legs turn to jelly. Then, without hesitation, the Indian god turned and ran toward the distance of the Himalayas, ignoring the great god who was about to crawl out of the array, rolling and crawling on all fours. He was really frightened by Bu Fong. That palm had killed so many immortals of Hua. Those immortals were much stronger than him. God Garuda, I'm sorry. The god was very sad, and he was crying in his heart, but he still ran away. The array spun, and the void was torn apart. There seemed to be the figure of a big golden bird emerging from the array. Garuda was the god of India, a kind of golden-winged divine bird that rose from the flames and was immortal and indestructible. It was somewhat similar to the phoenix of Hua. When the void was torn apart, a commotion broke out in all parts of Hua. In the immortal mountain of Kunlun, a furious voice rang out, causing thunder to rumble in the sky. As the earth expanded, Kunlun, as the blessed land of the immortals, expanded tens of thousands of miles into Myeonyang. At this moment, the vast immortal mountain of Kunlun was shaking violently. I can't believe a fairy of Kunlun has fallen. Who did it? How dare you kill the maid of the Queen Mother of the West? A cold, furious voice shook heaven and earth, from the 9 heavens to the blue sky. The immortals of Kunlun will hunt this evil woman down with all their might. The Queen Mother bellowed. She had sent a fairy of Kunlun to hunt down an evil woman and seize the stove. Now that the fairy had fallen, it must have something to do with that evil woman. Even if it had nothing to do with her, it must be related. On the immortal island of Penglai, the sound of the great path rang out. An immortal energy rose from the sea. Suddenly, the Taoist, sitting cross-legged in the center of the immortal palace with a 7-colored disc above his head, stopped preaching. His eyes widened, and his gaze was filled with faint anger. The 4 heavenly kings have fallen. This evil woman is too presumptuous. As soon as the words came out, everyone in the immortal palace was shocked. Impossible. The 4 heavenly kings were peak heaven immortals, and when they cast the heavenly king seal together, they could even kill an immortal king. How could they have fallen on the ancestral planet? Is that evil woman that powerful? Impossible. The 4 heavenly kings are the divine generals of the celestial court. The ancestral planet has been revived, and the celestial court is about to return. But now, the divine generals have fallen. This is an ominous sign. The immortals in the immortal palace murmured among themselves, their faces filled with shock. They could not believe it. They did not even want to believe that the 4 heavenly kings were ranked among the top among all the immortals and gods. Shin Gongbao hid under it, a look of relief on his face. Fortunately, he ran fast, or the sect master's anger would have been because of him. The Taoist closed his eyes and pinched his fingers together. There seemed to be an invisible force lingering around him. Then, The Taoist priest opened his eyes. 2 of the 4 great divine artifacts are with that evil man, and he has gathered the ancestral planet's fortune. He will surely face a great calamity. The Taoist pinched his fingers together, and there seemed to be a deep look in his eyes. Suddenly, an immortal cloud rose from under him, and he flew out of the palace and hovered in midair. He looked at the endless coastline. The ancestral planet's revival has accelerated, and immortal kings are about to strike. This evil man must be killed, and the 4 heavenly kings must be avenged. The Taoist turned around. He looked down at the immortals and deities. Gentlemen, are there any immortal kings willing to capture this evil man? At the peak of the Himalayas, a loud and clear bird cry resounded. There seemed to be a flame burning in the void. Then, a large golden bird spread its wings and flew out. It flew out of the void and instantly turned into a god with a bird's head and a human body. He was clad in golden rings and a suit of golden feather armor, looking very magical. Buzz, this was the great god of India, Garuda. After stepping out of the array, Garuda glanced around and rested his eyes on Bufong. At this moment, Bufong was the only one who could confront him head-on. As for the mortal fighter jet in the distance, he ignored it. Little Tanuki, Jelly, Garuda walked out and said a lot of things, but Bufong did not understand a single one of them. After all, he was the god of India. However, he quickly retreated and switched to using his divine sense. This time, Bufong understood him. Hand over the divine artifacts, and I'll spare your life. Garuda stood high up in the sky, surrounded by a golden flame. His life was immortal. He was the god of India. He was the great god under Shiva, and his strength was extremely powerful, comparable to an immortal king of Hua. Even though he was in Hua's territory now, he was fearless. At most, if he encountered an immortal king, he could just run away. Besides, he could not be killed. His regenerative ability was very powerful. Inside the fighter jet, Chief Luo and the others narrowed their eyes. That's Garuda, the symbol of India's immortality, Chief Luo said. After witnessing Bufong's fearlessness, he was able to remain calm in the face of such a great god. He had seen the world, and he was indeed different. A big bird? I'm afraid this Indian god doesn't know Senior's character yet, Xiao AI said in a happy and relaxed mood. Now that the gods were in power, mortals like them could breathe a sigh of relief when someone appeared and punished the gods in this way. As far as they knew, the appearance of the gods had brought about a change in the world. After all, no one knew whether the gods who appeared were good or bad. In this world, there was a small country, or even an entire country, where everyone was slaughtered by the god they worshipped. Not all deities were good. Senior's character? Chief Luo was taken aback. What kind of character did Bufong have? A big bird. Isn't it just a bird? Besides, don't you think this Garuda is very similar to the golden-winged rock in our myths? There's an old saying that goes like this: when a Kuan transforms into a rock, it's so big that it needs 2 grills, one with secret recipe and one with mild spiciness, Xiao AI said eloquently. Chief Luo stared at Xiao AI, dumbfounded. You're the one who's King smart and brave, aren't you? The character described by Xiao AI was really a good match for Bufong. Didn't you see that Mo Lisho's flower fox ferret was taken away as an ingredient? The big bird of India will probably end up in a very sad state. Garuda was a lofty existence. According to the immortals of Hua, he was an immortal king. Although he was just an ordinary immortal king, he was powerful enough to do whatever he wanted on Earth. This was his first appearance. Of course, he had to do his best. Bufong looked indifferently at Garuda. He grabbed the white tiger heaven stove in his hand. Is this what you want? Bufong asked. Garuda's eyes lit up. Yes, you're smart. Garuda said. Take this, Bufong said, twitching the corner of his mouth. As soon as he said that, he gently swung the white tiger heaven stove. A ripping sound rang out. The stove drew an arc in the air and swept across the sky. Garuda raised his hand greedily. This was a divine artifact that all the gods and immortals around the world were fighting for. If he could get it back, the great god Brahma would definitely reward him with a supreme opportunity. Boom! All of a sudden, Garuda felt that something was not right. As the stove fell, its power did not diminish at all. Bam! Grabbing the stove, Garuda's eyes widened. He felt a great force coming at him, and then the stove smashed into his face. In a flash, Garuda turned into a giant golden bird, spread his wings, and soared into the sky. You're courting death. Oh, a golden-winged rock? Bufong's figure had appeared above Garuda's head. No, I think it's a hybrid. Garuda paused. He had a bad feeling. What is this immortal of Hua going to do? Boom! Bufong punched Garuda's head. Circulating his divine power, Bufong did not hold back at all. Garuda screamed as he was knocked down from the sky and smashed hard into the Himalayas. Even the mountain was a little shorter. The Indian god, who had climbed over the Himalayas, shuddered when he heard the scream. Dear God Garuda, take care. Bufong's eyes lit up as he looked at Garuda, who was bathed in flames again. An immortal bird? What does that mean? It means an endless supply of food. The corner of Bufong's mouth twitched slightly. Another move was launched. Garuda let out another miserable scream, and then he stopped breathing. After a while, Garuda rose from the flames again. Screams rang out one after another. After a long time, extremely weak and dejected, Garuda was caught by Bufong and thrown into the system storage space. From beginning to end, there was only a hint of sadness in his heart. Damn it, I'm the god Garuda, comparable to a Hua immortal king. Why am I captured as a food ingredient? Where the hell did this demon come from? Lord Brahma, save me. Boom! No matter how Garuda screamed, Bufong shoved him into the system's storage space. Everyone in the fighter jet was speechless. Down below, Bufong walked up to you, took you, and sat down on the ground. Little Hu jumped up and down beside him. Puff! On the quiet peak of the Himalayas, Bufong lit a silver bonfire. Moreover, Bufong pulled out the wings of a giant golden bird, plucked off its feathers, and put it over the fire to roast. Chief Luo, Xiao, AI, Garuda. Chapter 16:26. The fighter jet roared. From above, the rope fell. Chief Luo, Xiao AI, and the others jumped out of the jet. Although they were not as strong as immortals, their bodies were strong enough to survive a fall of 10,000 meters. However, they were still able to withstand this height. Chief Luo was fine. After all, he was a fire elemental superpower. When he used it, his head would burst into flames, and he was not afraid of the cold on the roof of the world. But Xiao AI and the others could not. They wrapped themselves tightly in their military coats, making them look like a ball. They came to Bufong's side. Xiao AI was still holding a camera in her hand. She zoomed in from afar, as if she wanted to record the scene of Bufong cooking the golden-winged rock. Oh no, Garuda! At the thought of this, Xiao AI's hands trembled. She did not know whether it was because of the cold or excitement. Garuda was the great god of India. He was the supreme god. But what happened in the end? He came to Hua and was killed by Senior. Why did it feel so exciting? When Xiao AI and Chief Luo approached Bufong, Bufong was preparing to grill Garuda's wings. The silver divine flame was burning quietly. It was as if it was the same color as the white snow, and when it shone on it, it was rather beautiful. The divine fire was burning and emitting a scorching heat that chased away the chill on Xiao AI and Chief Luo's bodies. Bufong glanced at them as if he was surprised by their courage. Sit, Bufong said. Xiao AI and Chief Luo quickly sat down awkwardly. Senior is a ruthless man. He killed all the gods and Buddhas with one slap. He turned Garuda into an ingredient with just a few punches. Such a ruthless man is rarely seen in 1,000 years. Senior, are you really going to grill Garuda's wings? Xiao AI swallowed her saliva and said. Bufong paused, then turned to look at her. The corner of his mouth twitched expressionlessly when he saw the latter was filming with a camera. Of course, don't worry, Garuda has a strong recovery ability. He will have an endless supply of wings. Bufang said. Xiao Ai did not know whether to laugh or cry. Was she worried about this? She was afraid that Bufang's action would offend Brahma, the great god of India. That god was a truly terrifying existence. Even among the immortals of Hua, he was a supreme being. However, she could not see the slightest worry on Bufang's face. The camera was flashing, and Xiao Ai did not say anything else. Xiao Ai took off her heavy cotton-padded jacket around the divine flame. Due to the presence of the divine flame, Xiao Ai did not feel the heat. While Xiao Ai was filming, she could not help but turn the camera to Nethery. Is this the woman Senior has been looking for? It was really beautiful, Xiao Ai exclaimed, and she even felt a little ashamed of herself. It was too beautiful. She was even more beautiful than the fairies in heaven. Especially now, you was sitting next to Bufang with her arms around her fair legs. Her chin rested on her thighs, and her fine, neat hair spread down, covering half of her face. There was a hint of melancholy on the fair and flawless side of her face. Her eyes seemed to be staring at the bonfire in front of her, watching the dancing flame. It was dreamlike and unparalleled in beauty. Let's think of these wings as the wings of a rock. Bufang's discordant voice rang out. He did not seem to be in the mood to appreciate the beauty. At this moment, all Bufang's attention was on the Garuda's wings. This Garuda is a mixed-blood rock, but its magic power is not bad. As he spoke, Bufang skillfully plucked off the golden feathers of the rock. When the bare wings appeared, Bufang washed them with snow water. The next moment, he found a branch out of nowhere and inserted it into the Garuda's wings. Then, he approached the bonfire and used it to roast the wings. Senior, tell us what we need to pay attention to when roasting the rock wings. Xiao Ai asked playfully. Bufang glanced at her, but did not refuse. You need to control the fire. The wings of a rock are no different from ordinary chicken wings. It's just that they're a little different in size. Bufang said, Garuda, you need to pay attention to the fire and the color of the wings. Of course, be careful not to burn them. The burnt smell will affect the texture and taste. As he spoke, Bufang controlled the divine flame to burn the wings. Crackle! The divine flame jumped. Not long after, oil appeared on the bird's wings and slowly dripped down along the bird's wings as the oil dripped into the bonfire. The flames became more majestic. How do you pay attention to the fire? Let me tell you a trick to roast the wings. It's very practical. To judge the fire, you need to look at the changes in the meat. As for how to feel the changes, you can do this. As he spoke, Bufang reached out his hand, and with a smacking sound, he plucked the hot wings. He peeled off a piece of skin. The oil rolled out, filling the air with a strong aroma. If you roast it like this, it's almost done, Bufang said solemnly. Then, he began to fiddle with the bottles and cans. He didn't say anything else. He sprinkled the bottles and cans on the Garuda's wings. His movements were skillful, and Xiao Ai was dumbfounded. Xiao Ai sniffed the aroma in the air, feeling intoxicated. It smelled so good. She had never smelled something so fragrant before. His appetite couldn't help but be aroused. The rock is a divine beast, and its meat contains immortal energy. Once it's heated and roasted, the immortal energy will mix with the aroma of the meat, and the aroma will be very strong. Of course, this requires skill. Otherwise, it will be difficult to bring out the aroma to the extreme. Instead, it will make it hard to taste, Bufang said. Xiao Ai kept nodding. Chief Luo was dumbfounded. F***CK. You can roast a wing with so many tricks? And you're so eloquent. This showed that Bufang had done a lot of roasting divine beasts. Senior is indeed a senior. A fighting chicken among foodies. Next, it's time to pour the honey, Bufang said. Bufang took out a jar of honey from his system storage space. That's right, this was not ordinary honey. It was the honey cultivated by a god-level divine bee. The honey was golden in color and exuded a sweet aroma. He opened the lid of the jar. Bufong dipped a brush in the honey and began to pour it on the golden rock wing. The golden honey was a little sticky. When it was poured on the wing, the honey flowed down along the golden and oily skin. Xiao AI couldn't help but drool. Little Hu jumped up and down. He couldn't wait any longer. Hachi Chi panted heavily. Yu's eyes lit up as well. She stared at the wing. Like breaking ink, Bufong swept the brush. He finished pouring the honey. The golden wing glowed with a hazy golden light, and steam rose from it, making it look like an exquisite work of art. Bufong's appetite was also very high. After all, he was hungry after working for a while. The honeyed rock wing is ready, Bufong said. His tone was slightly heavier, which made everyone's heart tremble. F***, it's finally ready. Their saliva almost flowed into a river. The rockwing was very big. Bufong was not stingy. He cut some meat for Xiao AI and Chief Luo as well. Of course, it was just a little. Given Xiao AI and Chief Luo's physical fitness, eating that much was already their limit. Although Garuda was a little weak, he was, after all, one of the top gods in India. The spiritual energy contained in the meat was very turbulent, especially after being cooked by Bufong. The spiritual energy in the meat did not dissipate at all. Bufong gave the roasted wing to you. Then, he casually pulled another wing from Garuda's body in the system's storage space. Anyway, this fellow is immortal, and the wing recovers very fast, so Bufong did not mind roasting the wing. One for Little Hu, and one for himself. When he was done, the whole summit of the Himalayas was filled with the rich aroma of roasted wings. Bufong also tried a variety of roasting methods, adding cumin and pepper. Xiao AI ate with relish, her eyes gleaming with immortal light. The strength of her superpower soared. After eating a small piece of rock meat, her superpower actually reached A class. This made her very happy. It's delicious, and it can improve my cultivation base. Chief Luo was also very surprised. Is Senior, the god of cooking? He could not believe that his superpower had reached S class. He did not know what to say. To be honest, the recovery of spiritual energy was not as good as a roasted wing. After eating a little, they could not eat anymore. There was too much energy, and they would not be able to digest it. If they forced themselves to eat, they would only be stuffed to death. They could only look at Bufong and Yu, Little Hu, gorging themselves with envy. It was a blessing to be able to eat. While feeling envious, Xiao AI was busy sending the information to the higher-ups. The roasted rock wings needed to be shared. She wanted more people to feel the pain of not being able to eat them. Even in the Himalayas, the signal was very weak. Xiao AI still had the most advanced equipment, so she sent the video. Xiao AI, who was good at computers, uploaded the video and used some tricks to make it the headlines. Even if it did not make the headlines, it was soon pushed to the headlines by the netizens. This video was too shocking. She clicked on the video. What she saw was a group of immortals and deities hovering at the top of the Himalayas. The immortals in different shapes and forms made many people exclaim. When Bufong fought the old llama and melted the ice and snow around him, the video reached its climax. However, the climax was not over yet. What happened next made the netizens even more excited. The appearance of the 4 heavenly kings, the attack of the Kunlun fairies, the appearance of foreign deities and deities, it made the netizens hold their breath. However, when they saw all the deities and Buddhas in the sky being killed by Bufong with one slap, everyone who was watching the video was dumbfounded, unable to utter a single word. They were completely shocked. F***. This is too exciting. Is this a movie? However, it was not over yet. Then, the Indian god Garuda appeared. In the end, the Garuda, which everyone thought was an almighty being, became a food ingredient and was captured. Everyone did not know whether to laugh or cry. When the video changed to the rock wing, everyone was boiling with excitement. The scene changed so fast that it looked like a tornado. However, they cannot take their eyes off it. Their faces seemed to be glued to the screen, and their noses kept twitching. Damn it, I can smell the honey-roasted wing even through the screen. The video ended after Xiao AI finished eating the rock meat. With a click, it ended. There was still an unfinished part to be continued. This caused everyone to be dumbstruck. The whole internet seemed to be about to explode. A movie? Special effects? But it was so real that it did not seem fake at all. Besides, the spiritual energy on Earth had recovered, and the immortals had descended to the world. This kind of thing was not fake. F*CK. This is too F*King shocking. What kind of ferocious person is that? He killed the 4 heavenly kings with one slap. I almost peed my pants watching it. It's too exciting. Slapping those high and mighty deities to death with a single slap is simply too satisfying. Roasting the wing is the most exciting, okay? The highlight of the video is the roasting of the Garuda's wing. Poor Garuda. That's enough. I'm not talented, but I just learned from the senior in the video and roasted a chicken wing. Watching the video and eating the chicken wing, it's really delicious. The netizens were boiling with discussion. Xiao AI was holding the computer and giggling foolishly. She had decided that from today on, she would cling to the senior's thigh and secretly film. Oh, follow the senior. Chief Luo glanced helplessly at the giggling Xiao AI, then at Bufang, who had spat out a bone. He was both surprised and delighted to see Bufang. For the country, such an existence might bring benefits to the peace of the country. Well, I'm full now. I'll have to trouble you to find someone again. Bufang spat out the bone on the ground. It fell into the snow, still steaming. Senior, please tell me. Well, there should be an egg in front of this stove. Someone must have escaped from that egg. It shouldn't be difficult to find that person's identity and traces. Help me find that person, and I'll treat you to flower fox ferret meat next time. Bufang said, Flower fox ferret. There was an egg in front of the divine artifact. Did someone escape from that egg? Chief Luo's eyes narrowed. This was a very important piece of information. Don't worry, senior. I'll arrange it right away. After that, Chief Luo walked toward the fighter jet. Bufang happily planned to roast another Garuda wing. However, just as Bufang tore off the Garuda wing, the vermilion bird and Qilin's voices suddenly rang in his mind. Huh? Bufang froze, and his eyes narrowed. Chapter 16:27. Bufang paused. His eyes narrowed, and he fell into deep thought. The voices of the vermilion bird and the Qilin rang out in his head. Yes, they were speaking at the same time. Bufang frowned. It was one thing for the vermilion bird to speak, but the Qilin also spoke. Was something big about to happen? Bufang's mind flickered as he entered his spirit sea. The sleeves of his vermilion robe fluttered. Hovering in the center of the spirit sea, Bufang looked at the majestic Qilin and the vermilion bird in the distance. The vermilion bird was burning like a fire. Now that she had completely recovered, she gave Bufang a very different feeling. The previous vermilion bird seemed to lack some spirituality. But now, the vermilion bird really seemed to have flesh and blood. What's wrong? Bufang asked, puzzled. Rumble. As soon as the Qilin moved, heaven and earth rumbled. However, the Qilin didn't say anything. He just rolled his eyes. Then, the vermilion bird spoke. Her beautiful voice immediately lingered in the air. Little host, White Tiger is in trouble. Vermilion bird said. It was as if a gentle woman was whispering in one's ear. The voice was soft, and it kept stirring one's ear. White Tiger is in trouble. Bufang paused, and then he understood what the vermilion bird meant. White Tiger had run out of the egg, and now it must be in some trouble. I don't think so. White Tiger has broken out of the egg. Although it's flawed, unless it's an existence at the level of a high-grade god king, no one can suppress it, Bufang said. On Earth, a high-grade god king was almost equivalent to a peak immortal king. There must be existences at this level, but they shouldn't appear often. I don't know about that. White Tiger contacted me. As for the black turtle and the stupid dragon, they haven't contacted me yet. The vermilion bird said. Bufang nodded, indicating that he understood. It seemed that he had to hurry up. It would not be easy to completely restore the artifact's spirit. The vermilion bird told Bufong a little more. Then they fell silent. As for the Qilin lying on the side, it was sleeping soundly with its eyes closed. Bufong withdrew from the spirit sea. Xiao AI was still giggling on the side. She was holding her computer and trying hard to reply to the netizens' questions. As for Chief Luo, he had already gone to make arrangements. Nethery and Foxy had eaten their fill, so they were resting in a pile of soft snow. Shrimpy was lying on his shoulder, spitting bubbles without moving an inch. Let's go. It's almost time to leave this place. Bufong surveyed his surroundings. He had killed countless immortals and taken back the white tiger heaven stove. There was no need for him to stay any longer. The fighter plane landed. Bufong did not refuse. He led you and the others into the fighter jet. Inside the fighter jet, there was a specially prepared combat room. There was a roar. The fighter jet sped away and disappeared in a short while. Jiangdong City. Metahuman base. Bufong and the others returned to the command room. Many people in the room looked excited and worshipful when they saw Bufong, which puzzled Bufong. Senior, they're all your diehard fans now. Xiao AI clenched her fists excitedly. She had uploaded Bufong's fighting videos to the internet, and Bufong's reputation on the internet was now very strong. Many people admired Bufong very much. Since ancient times, people had always worshipped righteous experts, so this was not too surprising. Senior, we've gathered all the surveillance footage from all over the world, and we've basically locked onto one person. Chief Luo said immediately when he saw Bufong come in. Bufong nodded. Suddenly, several shots appeared on the big screen. The camera moved and finally locked onto a figure. It was a young man who looked only 13 or 14 years old. He was a maverick with a head of long white hair that curled upwards, giving him a somewhat domineering air. If one did not look carefully, one would think that he was some rebellious teenager. He looked inconspicuous in the crowd. Yes, it's him. Bufong recognized the young man at a glance. There was no doubt that he was White Tiger. He did not expect White Tiger to be a child. Recalling White Tiger's proud appearance, it was not an exaggeration to say that he was a child. The last place this man was seen was at the border between India and Hua. Chief Luo frowned. He found that the problem was a little tricky. Bufong was taken aback. You mean this guy might have gone to India? Chief Luo nodded solemnly. If that was the case, the problem would be somewhat difficult to solve. After all, if White Tiger went out of Hua's border, he would have to report the problem to the higher-ups. The advanced fighter jets and machines of the Special Abilities Bureau would not be able to be used. Bufong thought for a moment and felt that it was possible. Could White Tiger have been captured by the gods of India? What gods in India could pose a threat to White Tiger? Bufong thought for a while, but he could not figure it out. Then his eyes lit up. The next moment, with his hands clasped behind his back, Bufong came to an open space. Garuda was dragged out by Bufong by the neck. This guy's wings had actually grown out. As long as the golden flames on his body were not extinguished, he could continuously regenerate. To be honest, this was the first time Bufong had seen such an amazing ingredient. Bufong asked Garuda a lot of questions. However, at first, the big bird was stubborn and refused to say anything. However, after Bufong listed out a lot of dishes, Garuda told him everything he knew. I have no choice but to tell you. If I don't, I will become one of those dishes that Bufong listed out. He put Garuda back into the system's storage space. After that, Bufong walked out of the interrogation room. Chief Luo walked over with a serious face. Senior, are you really going to India? Bufong nodded. He could not leave White Tiger alone. After all, he was just a child. With the recovery of spiritual energy on Earth, the gods of India must have awakened as well. Senior, you must be careful if you go to India. Chief Luo heaved a long sigh. We may not be able to provide much support, and India will definitely stop you. It's fine. It's just a small matter. Bufong said faintly. He really did not care about it at all. The only thing he cared about was White Tiger and the god who had captured it. According to Garuda, The gods who could threaten white tiger in India were the three gods. They were Brahma, Shiva, and Vishnu. Garuda used to be Vishnu's mount, but after he made some achievements in his cultivation, he became independent. Garuda was probably regretting his decision to become independent at this moment. Of course, there are many other gods in India, but only these three could really threaten white tiger. Shiva and Vishnu should be peak immortal kings. As for Brahma, he was most likely an immortal emperor. It was normal for such existences to threaten white tiger. After all, white tiger was still imperfect, and he did not even know who Bufong was. In Bufong's opinion, white tiger was just an ignorant child. Just like the naked vermilion bird woman back then, Bufong felt responsible for them. Since you've made up your mind, Senior, I'll prepare a car for you right away, Chief Luo said. However, she was rejected by Bufong with a wave of his hand. I'll set off right away, Bufong said. The car was too slow for Bufong. Senior, I want to go with you. Xiao Ai's eyes lit up as she stared at Bufong and cheered. Bufong glanced at her and did not refuse. Chief Luo did not know whether to laugh or cry. It seems Senior is going to stir up trouble again. For some reason, Chief Luo thought of Garuda's tragic end. Bufong left the base with you and Xiao Ai. Bufong's divine sense surged. It enveloped you and the others, rose from the ground, and rushed into the sky in an instant. There seemed to be a flash of light, which turned into a stream of light and shot into the distance. Chief Luo and his colleagues from the Special Abilities Bureau were all shocked when they saw this. This move is like that of an immortal. Senior is really an immortal. Chief Luo sighed with emotion. He still remembered the first time he met Bufong. He had mistakenly thought that Bufong was an ordinary person. Now that he thought about it, he could not help but blush. Beep, beep, beep. All of a sudden, Chief Luo's cell phone on his waist rang. His expression changed when he answered the call. Whoosh! The wind kept blowing. It was as if the wind was howling. However, Xiao Ai, who was flying in the sky, could not feel the wind at all. She was carrying a bag, which contained cameras, computers, and other equipment. This time, she was going to follow Senior's movements live. She felt that Senior was her faith, and the world needed faith. She looked down at the ground. The mountain range was moving at a high speed. It was so fast that it was as if time had been reversed. The Himalayas were crossed in an instant. Buzz suddenly, Bufong, who was flying, frowned. He brought you and the others to hover in the sky and did not continue flying. What's wrong? You asked, puzzled. Someone is here to stop me. Bufong thought for a moment and said, Oh, you, Xiao Ai, and the others froze. Then they raised their heads and looked into the distance. There was a plane in front of them. On the plains, dust flew everywhere. A terrible rumble echoed out. Tanks and armored vehicles were driving, kicking up dust as they aimed their cannons at Bufong. In addition to the cannons, there were red-tipped missiles that had not been fired. Howitzers, cannons, and many other weapons were aimed at Bufong at the same time. Their countless soldiers in camouflage uniforms, holding guns, were waiting for Bufong. Xiao Ai's expression changed in an instant. This looks like they're prepared. Bufong's expression remained the same. Bufong narrowed his eyes and looked at the back of the army. Over there seemed to be an enormous, illusory figure entrenched there. It was a god riding on the back of a divine elephant. He maintained a strange posture and looked at Bufong from a distance. The gods of India know how to use the military power of mortals? You, who was standing next to Bufong, said, pursing her lips. Senior, don't underestimate military power. With the recovery of the world's spiritual energy, the military power of today has changed. It has the ability to suppress immortals. Xiao Ai's face turned a little pale. She even forgot that the camera in her hand was broadcasting live. Some people on the internet had claimed that the video was fake. Xiao Ai's live broadcast this time was also to slap those people in the face. However, she somewhat regretted this live broadcast this time. It doesn't matter. I still have to bring him back. No matter how many people come to stop me, it's all the same. Bufong said faintly. He He looked at the illusory god and twitched the corner of his mouth slightly. Bufong glanced at you. His hand shook. A moment later, a honey-glazed wing appeared, and he shoved it into Nethery's hand. When you finish the wing, I'm almost done, Bufong said. You pursed her lips, but she did not refuse and took the wing. Meanwhile, Little Hu and Xiaopi, who were lying on Bufong's shoulders, ran to Yu's side at the same time. Xiao Ai, on the other hand, was dumbfounded. Senior is indeed a senior. He's as domineering as ever. Is he going to wipe out the army with a single wing? Bufong turned around, his vermilion robe flapping noisily. The wind was blowing, and his long hair was fluttering. No matter what god you are, if you don't hand over the white tiger, I'll blow you all up. Bufong's faint voice rang out. The next moment, he clasped his hands behind his back and took a step forward. As Bufong took a step forward, the army on the plain in the distance opened fire at his command. Bang! 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 Armored tanks, howitzers, cannons, and other shells flew toward Bufong like they were free. In the blink of an eye, streams of fire streaked across the sky. Like a meteor shower, they smashed toward Bufong, who was walking on the plain. Chapter 16:28. Is this really okay, Vishnu? A faint voice rang out and lingered in the ears of the god, sitting cross-legged on the back of the divine elephant. It doesn't matter. Earth's spiritual energy has recovered, and the power of mortals also contains special abilities that are enough to pose a threat to gods. Let's weaken the power of this Hua immortal first. The god sitting cross-legged on the back of the divine elephant smiled faintly. The god had a humanoid appearance. His skin was dark blue, and he wore gems on his body. He had 4 arms, each of which held a weapon that flashed with divine light. There were divine hammers, swords, bows, and conches. Vishnu slowly raised his head and glanced at the sky. Immediately, he saw a god riding a white bull looming in the void, as if he was in a distant time and space. The god had 1 face, 3 eyes for arms, and a blue neck. He had 2 personalities, sometimes angry and sometimes gentle. He was the Lord God of India, Shiva, who was at the same level as Vishnu. Clearly, none of these gods dared to take Bufong lightly. Or rather, none of them dared to take the immortals of Hua lightly. Boom! 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 One shell after another shot into the sky like fireworks, dazzling and blinding. Black smoke spread out, filled with an aura of destruction. Bam! The shell hit the ground, causing the ground to tremble and dust to rise high into the air. Fire on the plains, among the densely packed army. A general in a military uniform roared with a pair of binoculars in his hand. His eyes were bloodshot. Blow up that Hua immortal. We have the most advanced god-killing weapons provided by the United States. We must blow this so-called Hua immortal to pieces. The Indian general bellowed. He had received a decree from God to stop the Hua immortal. This made the fire of war in his body burn fiercely. In particular, his army was equipped with advanced technology and weapons imported from the United States. The recovery of spiritual energy was unfriendly to the United States, a superpower in the world. The historical foundation of the United States was too weak, and its gods were all ordinary minor gods. Faced with the West, a superpower like Hua, with a rich historical foundation, could not resist. However, the United States had the technology. The Americans were good at researching technology. They relied on the Spirit Chi revival to develop weapons that specialized in suppressing the gods. These weapons could break through the defenses of the gods, suppress the divine power of the gods, and injure the gods. The Americans had already tried the effects of these weapons. The gods of their country were killed by them with these weapons. The Americans call these weapons God-slaying weapons. In fact, it was just a type of energy that was infused into the weapon. Boom, boom, boom. Bufong walked with his hands clasped behind his back. Amidst the bombardment, he walked at a steady pace. When the bomb fell, the ground exploded, and dust flew everywhere, hiding his body within it. "Blow him up!" the Indian general roared. Tanks, armored vehicles, cannons, and all kinds of fighter jets roared. They did not dare to be careless when dealing with an immortal. But a huge cannonball shot towards Bu Fong at high speed. Bu Fong slowly raised his head. He held out his hand. Without dodging or evading, he directly grabbed at the shell. Where did the Indian god get his courage from? Why did he dare to use firearms and explosives against him? The weapon suddenly fell and exploded with a loud bang. Bu Fong furrowed his brows. He seemed to have sensed the strange energy in the weapon. This immortal of Hua must be a fool. I can't believe he dares to reach out and grab that cannonball. The Indian general could not help but laugh out loud in excitement. That weapon would definitely be able to tear through the immortal's defense and blow up his arm. The Indian army was about to become the second army to slay the gods after the Americans. Kill! Fighter jets whizzed past. Howitzers and cannons were all aimed at Bu Fong. The tanks rumbled and shook, and the ground trembled along with them, sending sand and pebbles flying. It was a terrifying scene. At least, Xiao Ai, who was watching from a distance, was already trembling. It was too terrifying. The tremors made her hand, which was holding the camera, tremble. This was not a movie, but a real war. The bombardment was enough to destroy a city. Beep, beep, beep. In the direction of the Himalayas, one by one, the Hua army appeared at the border. They were all armed and on guard, watching the war in horror. It was a war against the gods. The cannonball fell. However, it was caught by Bu Fong. Boom! The flame engulfed him in an instant. A violent force seemed to tear apart his divine power and drill into his body. However, as soon as Bu Fong's divine sense flickered, those forces were crushed into dregs. Interesting. This firearm has a defense-breaking power mixed with it. Bu Fong gave a soft cry of surprise. However, Bu Fong was not in the mood to study it. He did not want to waste time now. He just wanted to save White Tiger. This Indian god is quite interesting. It seems he wants to use the power of these mortals to suppress my power. It's a good idea, but boom, the flame dissipated. Bu Fong, on the other hand, stood unscathed on the spot. The sleeves of his vermilion robe fluttered. In its complete form, the vermilion robe's defense was invincible. With his hands clasped behind his back, Bu Fong walked forward step by step. He stepped on the ground unhurriedly. Cannonballs, bullets, and grenades rained down. However, no matter how the shells bombarded him, he remained unscathed and was not affected at all. The hearts of the Indian army palpitated. Is this God? Why? This is the most advanced equipment in the United States. Oh, great Shiva! What kind of monster is this? The hearts of the Indian soldiers trembled. Keep your eyes peeled. Prepare the fighter jets. Prepare the missiles. Don't let him take another step. The general roared and gave the order. The gods and the higher-ups of the country had ordered them to stop this Huan man with all their might. They had to do it. They could not afford to let their guard down. Bam! A rumble echoed out. In the distance, a sea of flames surged. Fighter jets sped across the sky, firing bullets at them. The entire sky seemed to be covered by the fighter jets. In the direction of the Hua army, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Looking at Bu Fong, who was calm and composed in the midst of thousands of cannonballs, they felt like they were in a trance. Xiao Yao was about to go crazy. Her hand, which was holding the camera, was shaking. As she recorded the scene, it was uploaded to the internet. Everyone was paying close attention to this scene. The scene of one man facing an entire army was simply shocking. Everyone was so depressed that they could not even speak. All they could do was gasp for breath. Compared to the battle between the gods and immortals, this scene was perhaps more impactful. After all, firearms and explosives were more intimate to them, and they were more destructive. Bu Fong stood still and did not move forward. He took a deep breath. His divine sense surged out and formed an invisible screen of light. Buzz in the sky, the falling bullets, cannonballs, grenades, missiles, and so on, all of them stopped in midair. They could not move forward. The noisy sound of explosions came to an abrupt halt at this moment. The whole world fell silent. All the soldiers and generals of India widened their eyes and craned their necks to watch the shocking scene. Bufang slowly raised his hand. Then he slowly reached out and clenched his fist. Bam! 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 All the cannonballs exploded. The sky turned into a sea of fire, with flames surging everywhere. All the bombs exploded in midair, one after another, and were completely destroyed. In the United States, impossible. India is using our latest weapon, a weapon that could destroy the defense of gods. How can this one man be unscathed? Gods are nothing but powerful humans who have mastered mysterious powers. They're also human beings. When the power of weapons surpasses the limit of gods, they can kill gods. The senior officials of the United States, who were watching the battle through drones, were all in disbelief. They had been watching the battle, but the power Bufang showed terrified them. Their weapons could not get close to Bufang. Tell the experts to hurry up and study it. We must find a way to crack it. The senior officials of the United States gave the order. They, who had developed a weapon to suppress gods, once again felt a sense of urgency. Swoosh! The sky that was filled with surging flames dispersed the light. Bufang watched indifferently. His vermilion robe flapped noisily in the wind. Of course, in Bufang's eyes, all this was nothing out of the ordinary. He took a step forward. In an instant, the ground seemed to shrink. Bufang approached the battlefield in a flash. Tanks and armored vehicles aimed at Bufang, trying to kill Bufang. However, the next moment, Bufang's performance was like that of a demon god, and it was suffocating. Bufang raised his hand, then gently slapped it down. A series of rumbling sounds rang out in an instant. The muzzles of the tanks were bent and fell to the ground. The war chariots were flattened. The fighter jets whizzing in the sky were also instantly smashed down from the sky by the supreme mighty force. A series of explosions echoed through the sky. The army was in chaos. The general's morale was shaking. Fire! Everyone, attack! He grabbed a pistol and roared. Although the soldiers were already scared out of their wits by Bufang, they still obeyed the order and grabbed their weapons. They grabbed their submachine guns and roared as they fired at Bufang. Countless bullets shot toward Bufang. This scene was simply terrifying. Perhaps only the weapons in their hands could calm them down. However, what happened next completely subverted their understanding, making them lose the courage to continue fighting. Those bullets were shooting at high speed. When it was 1 meter away from Bufang's body, they all stopped moving. 1, 2, 3. They kept piling up and stopping. Finally, they piled up into a thick wall of bullets. Are you done? Bufang's faint voice rang out. A moment later, those floating bullets fell to the ground, sinking deep into the ground. Bufang clasped his hands. He stepped on the void and rose up. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, he rose into the air. With every step he took, heaven and earth seemed to tremble. The whole world fell silent. With every step he took, every soldier of India felt the pressure on them grow heavier. In the end, all of them were lying on the ground, without the strength to even move a finger. The pressure made them feel despair. At the last step, Bufang stomped in the air. Boom! There seemed to be an invisible wave spreading from the sky. The soldiers lying on the ground all coughed up blood. Their faces were sallow and bloodless. He had suppressed an army all by himself. Have you seen enough of hiding in the back? Bufang said with an indifferent face. He glanced at you in the distance. There, you has already eaten half of Garuda's wing. The corner of Bufang's mouth twitched. Then he turned his head and looked at the illusory god in the sky. Bufang flicked his finger. A streak of silver divine fire immediately shot out. It fell in an instant. It burned the void into nothingness. At the same time, the god riding the divine elephant, who was hidden in the void and invisible to the eyes of mortals, revealed himself. Vishnu smiled faintly. Riding the divine elephant, he stood high in the sky. Sure enough, the power of mortals can't stop you. I know what you want. If you want to save that white-haired boy, Give me the stove and Garuda in exchange." When the Indian army down below saw the god, a look of respect and madness appeared on their faces. "Great, supreme God Vishnu, God bless me. Great God, please punish this devil." The confidence of the soldiers had long been shattered. They were terrified. Bufang, on the other hand, was unmoved. He just looked at Vishnu indifferently. "Exchange? Do you think you're qualified to exchange with me?" Bufang's face was indifferent. The corner of his mouth twitched slightly. Chapter 16:29. Vishnu's plan was to trade with Bufang. Vishnu had planned to rely on the military power of mortals to weaken Bufang. Then, he would strike again and directly suppress this unscrupulous Hua immortal. However, after the battle just now, Vishnu was a little afraid of Bufang's strength. When the strange energy developed by the Americans was added to firearms, the power of the firearms would be multiplied, and it could even break the divine power defense of a god. Therefore, even he found it a little tricky to deal with. However, he was only a little tricky. After all, he was a god, one of the three great gods of India, a supreme being. He and Shiva caught the white tiger, a white-haired boy who had run out of the egg in the spiritual energy ceiling point. They had planned to fight for the stove, a divine artifact. However, their attention was attracted by the white tiger. After catching the white tiger, they found that the stove was more practical. This made them feel depressed. They had thought that there was something special about the white tiger. It took them a lot of effort to catch this guy. The white-haired boy was extremely arrogant and crazy in fighting. He was like a mad dog. Fortunately, they were strong enough. "What, immortal? You're really arrogant," Vishnu said, his face cold. Vishnu's face turned cold. Bufang's words were so arrogant that he could not help but feel angry. He was the great god of India, a supreme being. How could this Hua immortal look down on him? "I've decided I won't give this boy to you, and that stove belongs to me," Vishnu said. The divine elephant under him suddenly let out a roar, its long trunk hanging upside down in the sky, and its upper body raised as if to crush the sky. "Your elephant is not bad." Bufang's eyes lit up. Bufang's words made Vishnu even more furious. However, the people on the Hua side did not know whether to laugh or cry. Sure enough, this is Senior's style. Chief Luo, who was among the Hua soldiers, was also speechless when he heard Bufang's words. Xiao Ai even clenched her fists excitedly. That's the rhythm. Senior is so domineering. You grab her wings and munched on the food. Her mouth was covered in oil. He had to admit that Bufang's grilled wings were really delicious. And this scene, through his camera, was broadcasted live on the internet. Everyone was excited. Ha ha ha. Yesterday, there was a rock and one grill couldn't hold it. Now, there's a divine elephant and one pressure cooker can't hold it. Senior is a foodie, appraisal complete. Eat the mounts of all the gods and Buddhas. Senior Fong is so strong. I want to eat braised elephant. The netizens burst into laughter. It was originally a serious battle, but in the end, with just one sentence from Bufang, everyone was out of character. The divine elephant was sentient. It was furious when it heard Bufang's words. The elephant raised its trunk and let out a roar. Heaven and earth trembled. Vishnu was furious. "Where is the Azura?" His voice shook the heavens. The next moment, each of his 4 arms threw out a lotus. Each lotus bloomed, and 2 men and 2 women jumped out. The men were ugly and ferocious, and the women were beautiful and heroic. As soon as the 4 Azura kings appeared, they immediately brought with them a sharp aura. The 4 Azuras held their golden spears and pointed them at Bufang, brimming with killing intent. "Anyone who insults the Lord will be killed without mercy." A female Azura king roared. "Azura?" Bufang raised his eyebrows slightly. Each of these Azuras was equivalent to a top sky immortal, which was about the same level as the 4 heavenly kings. However, he had killed the 4 heavenly kings with one hand. What else could the 4 Azuras do? What a pity! Azuras can't be eaten, Bufong muttered. Instantly, everyone did not know whether to laugh or cry. The female Azura was even more furious. The four waved their spears in the sky and threw them at Bufong. Kill! The Azura roared. The spears tore through the void as if they were going to pierce a hole in the sky. The power was extremely terrifying. Many people's expressions flickered. Everyone in the Huan nation's military was horrified. Bufong had no intention of getting entangled with these Azuras. His behavior toward these Azura kings was simple and violent. He raised his hand. Immediately, a palm slapped toward the Azuras in the sky. A palm instantly condensed in the void. The palm slapped out horizontally. The spears were completely shattered by the palm. They broke into pieces. The expressions of the Azuras changed dramatically. They breathed out energy and unleashed their powerful auras, trying to resist the palm. However, when they came into contact with that palm, they could feel an unparalleled force appearing. The four Azuras in the sky crumbled in an instant, turning into dust and dispersing in the wind. With one slap, Bufong had killed four peak heaven immortal Azuras. On the plain, the Indian soldiers were dumbstruck, and their bodies began to tremble. It was too scary. Vishnu's pupils constricted. Shiva, who was hiding in the void, snorted. Obviously, they did not expect that the four Azuras would be killed in an instant. Vishnu attacked at the same time. Shiva transmitted his voice to Vishnu. He already felt uneasy. Vishnu focused his eyes and slapped the divine elephant with his palm. The divine elephant carried his body and immediately flew away. Go! Rumble! Vishnu soared into the sky. The divine elephant rushed out, walked in the sky, and instantly turned into thousands of elephants. 1, 2, 3. The sky was filled with a herd of elephants trampling down on Bufong. The scene was like the end of the world. The sky darkened in an instant. It was truly terrifying. Vishnu was indeed one of the three great gods of India. As soon as he attacked, heaven and earth changed color. This was the power of a true god. Rumble, the sky seemed to be shaking. It was as if a supreme was watching. Chief Luo's face began to tremble. This is an immortal king. Vishnu is actually an immortal king. The hearts of Xiao Ai and the others trembled. This is Senior's first time facing an immortal king, isn't it? I wonder if he can resist it. The people from the military were also watching. The netizens were also watching the scene through Xiao Ai's live broadcast. All of them held their breaths. They were laughing, but when Vishnu made his move, they still felt terrified. The world was silent. There was only the scene of elephants running wildly. Well, elephants can be eaten. Bufong twitched the corner of his mouth. Facing the stampede of thousands of divine elephants, he did not retreat. He just took a step forward and stomped on the void. With this, all the divine elephants shuddered. Then they stopped abruptly, knelt on the ground, and prostrated themselves toward Bufong. The divine elephants disappeared. Then they turned into a divine elephant and neighed. There's one more. Come meet together. Bufong turned his head. His god of cookings, I seemed to see through all illusions and looked at a corner of the void. There, a white bull appeared, and a person was riding on its back. It was none other than Shiva, one of the three great gods of India. Two great gods and two immortal kings had appeared. This caused everyone to feel a wave of horror. This Shiva is obviously planning to play dirty. He's so insidious. Fortunately, Senior has a keen sense of smell for cooking ingredients and discovered this trick. Shiva's face was expressionless as he raised his forearms. Then, the white bull under him mooed and sped toward Bufong. Rumble. The bull approached in a flash. Bufong punched the bull's head, breaking its horns and making it howl miserably. Bufong grabbed the divine elephant with one hand and the bull with the other. His eyes flashed with bright light, as if they were about to soar into the sky. The heaven and earth farmland. Open. Bufong furrowed his brows. Then, he raised his head and looked at the sky. There seemed to be a wool surging in the sky, then dissipated. Bufong twitched the corner of his mouth. His arms bulged. The void was torn apart. He tore open a crack. Behind that crack was a boundless world. The fragrance of flowers, grass, and trees. It was a paradise-like world. The divine elephant and the white bull disappeared. They were shoved into that world by Bufang. Vishnu and Shiva's expressions changed dramatically. They never thought that Bufang would have such a trick. Kill them, Vishnu bellowed, grabbing the divine conch in his hand. Shiva's eyes lit up. Then, both of them blew into the conch at the same time. A strange sound wave spread, and the plane immediately exploded under the attack of the sound wave. Countless Indian soldiers were decapitated in the explosion. Little conch blowing into it. Bufang raised his brows. Are these two here to make fun of me? Bufang said lightly. Everyone did not know whether to laugh or cry when they heard that. The sound wave spread to Bufang. The vermilion robe shook, but he remained indifferent. The little conch had no effect on Bufang. Let's try this magic treasure. Vishnu and Shiva looked at each other, and their faces became serious. Vishnu held the sword and threw it out. The third eye on Shiva's forehead opened and shot out a divine flame that was about to burn everything. It was the karmic fire. They were immortal kings, but they could not deal with a mere Hua mortal. Bufang clasped his hands behind his back. He let the sword slash him and the karmic fire burn him. With the vermilion robe, he was safe and sound. The perfect vermilion robe had an invincible defense. Hand over that white-haired boy, and I'll spare your lives. Bufang thought for a moment and said, How presumptuous! What will you do to us? Vishnu said coldly. Bufang was wearing a divine chef robe, which gave Bufang an invincible defense. However, they would not admit that they were no match for Bufang. They were the three supreme gods of India. How could they be weaker than an immortal of Hua? What can I do? Bufang had lost his patience. He clenched his Taotai arm, and the energy of yin and yang swirled around it. A terrible rumble resounded in the air. His muscles trembled, causing the void to explode. It was frightening. He threw out a punch. An invisible force enveloped Vishnu and Shiva. Both of them were horrified. Vishnu raised his hand to block it. However, under the punch, it shattered inch by inch. The silver flame was burning Vishnu's body into nothingness. He turned into a lotus flower. At the same time, Shiva's body exploded and reformed into a new figure. That figure turned into a woman's appearance. Shiva, who had turned into a woman, was terrified. When he saw Bufang clench his fist again, his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He turned and fled. Brahma, help me, Shiva hissed. She was terrified. She felt a sense of death envelop her. The appearance of this scene, no one had expected it. Senior is so strong? Those are the two great gods of India. How could he kill them just like that? Everyone was dumbfounded. Looking at Shiva's fleeing figure, they felt their hearts skip a beat. Bufang's face was expressionless and cold. He had killed all the gods and Buddhas with one punch. Suddenly, Bufang frowned. The moment the yin and yang Taodai arm smashed down, the void twisted. A white-haired boy with a swollen face and a heavy, cold chain appeared behind Shiva and in front of Bufang's fist. The moment he saw the white-haired boy, Bufang's punch came to an abrupt halt. White tiger. Bufang raised his eyebrows. The white-haired boy, who was tightly bound, raised his chin and snorted. Even if his face was swollen, he had to maintain his arrogant posture. No matter how much he boasted, he could not extinguish his arrogance. Buzz behind White Tiger, a ray of golden light slowly appeared. 1 ray, 2 rays, 3 rays. Thousands of rays of light surged, accompanied by the chanting of Buddha. The next moment, a huge Buddha with 4 faces emerged, shrouded in Buddha's light and shining on everything. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.